dobro jutro in prisrčno dobrodošli na mednarodni konferenci o krožni kulturi. Kot ste že lahko ugotovili, so med nami številni ugledni mednarodni gostje, zato bomo v nadaljevanju jezik zamenjali v angleščino. Je pa dogodek tudi sneman in bo podnaslovljen objavljen na uradnih spletnih straneh Muzeja za arhitekturo in oblikovanje ter društva PiNA, tako da že zdaj vas vljudno vabim k ogledu. So now I'll switch to English. Dear ladies and gentlemen, experts from non-governmental organizations, public institutions and sustainable businesses, researchers, academics, and all our distinguished guests, a very warm welcome to the International CCC Circular Culture Conference, or How Can the Culture Sector Become a Driver of the Green Transition? Facts are crucial, but they don't always move people to acts. Art has the power to turn data into feeling, and the feeling is what moves us from knowing to doing, says the renowned islanding Danish artist Olafur Eliasson. And this is precisely the focus of today's event, organized by the Association for Culture and Education, PiNA, and the Museum of Architecture and Design, MAO. Both organizations strongly believe that while technological solutions, energy policies, and environmental regulations are essential, they are not enough on their own. To truly succeed, we need powerful cultural movement to activate ecological imagination, and for this reason, the organizers have subtitled the conference with a free air philosophy: reuse, reduce, and reimagine. And now please give a great round of applause for our co-host and the director of the Museum of Architecture and Design, Ms. Maja Vardjan. Welcome.
Drage gostje, dragi gosti, kolegice, kolegi, spoštovani Tadej Meserko, vodja sektorja za razvoj kulturnih politik na Ministrstvu za kulturo. Lepo pozdravljeni v Muzeju za arhitekturo in oblikovanje MAO. Vesela sem, da danes povezujemo PiNO in MAO ter dva sorodna projekta, ki sta nastala v okviru razpisa Zeleni prehod v kulturi. In v MAO prav v tem mesecu zaključujemo projekt oziroma ga odpiramo za javnost z naslovom Platforma rabljenih materialov, ponovno uporaba razstavnih in drugih začasnih konstrukcij v kulturi. MAO je državni muzej, v katerem hranimo, raziskujemo in predstavljamo dediščino arhitekture in oblikovanja 20. stoletja, hkrati pa muzejsko dejavnost povezujemo s Platformo za sodobne ustvarjalce in prakse. S svojimi programi odpiramo prostor za kritični premislek o tem, kako sta in še danes arhitektura in oblikovanje soustvarjata družbo, okolje in pa naše vsakdanje življenje. In v tem kontekstu je nastala tudi Platforma rabljenih materialov, ki izhaja iz enega temeljnih komunikacijskih orodij muzeja, razstave, ki jo razumemo kot kuratorski in oblikovalski projekt. Zato veliko pozornost, kot boste tudi videli, če boste šli pogledati razstave, namenjamo razstavnim konstrukcijam. Kljub temu, da jih vedno bolj trajno snujemo, pa so se v desetletjih nabrali številni odsluženi materiali in elementi in zato smo razvili to knjižnico materialov, v kateri si bodo kulturne organizacije in posamezniki lahko izposodili okvirje, podnožja, stekla, mize in druge elemente za začasno uporabo. Projekt smo zasnovali kot pilotno rešitev MAO, vendar z namenom, da bi bila uporabljena tudi širše. Skupaj s skupino Futuring, društvom Pekinpah, Janom Kozincem, podjetjem Arde in Fakulteto za arhitekturo v Ljubljani smo vzpostavili podatkovno bazo materialov za izposojo ter pripravili priročnik z metodologijo za njihovo upravljanje. Knjižnica bo septembra v celoti odprta. V MAO pa zeleni prehod povezujemo tudi širšim razumevanjem ekologije. Primer je aktualna razstava Je narava moderna, ekološke perspektive v zbirki MAO ali pa projektu Brt vseživosti, ki v grajski park uvaja tradicionalen način košnje ter odpira vprašanja večvrstnega urbanizma. Skozi to prizmo razmišljamo tudi o gradu Fužine, namesto da bi čakali na celovito prenovo, ki se nam vedno bolj odmika, raziskujemo možnosti postopnih, delnih in prilagodljivih posegov, ki temeljijo na skrbi za obstoječe. S tem se vračam k vrednotam, ki jih kot kulturna institucija ne moremo le predstavljati v svojih programih, temveč jih moramo uresničevati skozi svoje lastno delovanje. torej ekologija, ponovna uporaba, biodiverziteta in skupnost, ne smejo biti zgolj teme razstav, ampak organizacijske, prostorske in materialne prakse muzeja. Zato je tudi današnja konferenca priložnost, da skupaj poiščemo načine, kako zeleni prehod prenesti iz načel vsakdanje delovanje. Hvala, da ste danes z nami. Welcome to the Museum of Architecture and Design, MAO. I will try to summarize my speech also in English. MAO is the national museum which collects architecture and design heritage, but at the same time we also serve as a platform for contemporary practitioners through programs as Biennial of Design, Center of Creativity, and so on. And we aim to create a space for a critical reflection on how architecture and design have shaped society, the environment, and our everyday life, and how they continue to shape it today. It was within this context that the project Platform for Used Materials, Reuse of Exhibition and Other Temporary Structures in the Cultural Sector was developed. The project emerged from one of the museum's principal means of communication, the exhibition. We understand an exhibition as both a spatial and design project, and therefore place close attention to its structures, furnishing, and materials. And despite the increasing commitment to sustainable exhibition design, a considerable quantity of reusable materials and elements have accumulated through decades. We have therefore developed a material library from which cultural organizations and individual practitioners will be able to borrow frames, plinths, glass panels, tables, and offer elements for temporary use. We conceived this project as a pilot initiative for MAO, but with the intention of making it applicable more widely, also to other institutions. For example, South theaters are interested in it. So together with many collaborators, we established a database for lending service, and we prepared a handbook containing a methodology and guidelines for managing materials. The library will fully open in September. Also, it's very important to stress that at MAO, we strive to connect the green transition with a broader understanding of ecology. One example is the current exhibition that I welcome you all to see. Upstairs, it's Nature Modern, Ecological Perspectives in MAO Collection, or project Crafting Biodiversity, which introduces traditional mowing practices into the MAO Park and raises questions about multi-species urbanism and the relationship between the cultural and natural heritage. And we are taking similar approach to Fujine Castle itself. Rather than waiting from a single comprehensive renovation, we are exploring gradual, partial, and adaptable interventions also in the unrenovated part of the castle, grounded in the care of what already exists. And this brings me back to the values that a cultural institution cannot merely present and promote through its programs, but they must become part of the museum's organizational, spatial, and material practices. Contemporary museums increasingly move beyond only presenting content or existing work towards creating direct experiences, encounters, and exchanges of knowledge. These approaches value concrete gestures of care and the formation of communities based on a shared interest and solidarity. And it is precisely in these connections that I also see the significance of today's conference. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vardian, and thank you for having us here. And now, dear guests, I'm happy to invite you to give a warm welcome to the President of the Association for Culture and Education, PiNA, Mr. Borut Jerman.
Najlepša hvala in dobrodošli še v mojem imenu. Thank you very much and warm welcome from my side as well. Jaz bom dodal še en jezik k današnji konferenci, saj za par minut. I will add another language to the conference. Farò il primo saluto in italiano. Prima di tutto perché PiNA ha la sede a Capodistria, che è zona bilingue ufficiale, quindi l'italiano è una lingua ufficiale, specialmente perché l'Italia, la sua cultura, le sue tradizioni e soprattutto le persone dall'Italia mi stanno particolarmente a cuore, quindi benvenuti, benvenute. Ja, pač PiNA ima sedež v Kopru, je dvojezično območje in na to smo ponosni. Predvsem pa nam je to skozi zgodovino živeti v Istri, ki je bila tradicionalno vedno na prepihu, namreč živimo 15 km od Italije, 10 km od Hrvaške in nam nekako v DNK ugradili pomen interdisciplinarnosti in povezovanja. In mislim, da glede na to, da tudi danes z ponosom sodelujemo z Muzejem za arhitekturo in oblikovanje in bi se še posebej zahvalil direktorici Maji Vardjan in celotni ekipi, ne samo za to sodelovanje, ampak za vse, kar počnejo in kako počnejo, ker ni tako pogosto, da javna institucija počne stvari na tako inovativne načine. In ravno povezovanje med javnim sektorjem, nevladnim sektorjem, gospodarstvom, čezsektorski pristopi, interdisciplinarni pristopi, se znati slišati en drugega, je edini način, ki ga poznamo na PiNI, da se lahko soočimo s tem, kar nas v prihodnosti čaka. Saj vsi vidimo, kaj se dogaja, kaj se je dogajalo do včeraj zvečer, kaj se bo še dogajalo, nikoli ne vemo, kdaj bo naslednji udarec. Živimo v izredno izzivalnih časih, prihodnost je neznana, nevihte so na obzorju, ne vemo, kdaj bo udarila toča, kje bo udarila toča. In edini način, da se s tem soočimo, in edini način, da skupaj preživimo, je, da smo povezani. In to ne samo na institucionalni ravni, predvsem na človeški ravni. Mislim, da je to nekaj, kar se moramo ponovno naučiti. In hvala ministrico za kulturo, hvala razpisu za zeleni prehod, ki je omogočil seveda posamezne projekte, predvsem pa povezovanje deležnikov, ki se že nekaj časa ukvarjamo z temi temami. PiNA kot taka je izvedla in izvaja še nekaj mesecev projekt EkoKreatura, ampak predvsem pa smo ponosni na to, da smo danes uspeli prinesti predstavnice dveh organizacij, s katerimi sodelujemo že nekaj časa, in to je Juris Bicycle in Kilovat z Bolonje, o katerih boste malo slišali kasneje. Ampak predvsem si želimo ustvariti prostor, ustvariti skupnost, ki se zaveda, da na napakah iz preteklosti se moramo nekaj naučiti, da jih ne ponovimo v prihodnosti. So thank you very much. I was talking about the importance of collaboration, interdisciplinarity, cross-sectoral collaboration. I'm super proud that we have representatives here from the public sector, from the NGO sector, and from the private sector businesses as well. So it's really important in the challenging times that we are facing to not just collaborate, but to support each other, to understand each other, and to try to figure it out what is the best thing that we can do, not to change things, but to at least to cope with what's going on. And I'm really proud to have Laura here from Juris Bicycle, to have Chiara from Kilovat, organizations that we are collaborating for quite some time now. But it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is to know each other, to support each other, and to continue to work together, because otherwise we just feel alone, and feeling alone in these times, it's the most dangerous thing. So thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jerman. And now I'm honored to invite to the stage the representative of Cultural Policy Development Directorate from Ministry of Culture, Mr. Tadej Meserko. Welcome.
Lep pozdrav torej tudi v imenu Ministrstva za kulturo. Jaz bi želel uvodoma samo upravičiti vršilko dolžnosti generalnega sekretarja, to je magistro Andrejo Ravnihar-Megušar, ki se je želela danes udeležiti, ampak je zaradi drugih obveznosti ni uspel, se bo pa tokom konference upam, da vseeno uspela udeležiti. Skratka, kultura je v družbi prepoznana kot tista, ki nekako išče smisle, ki reflektira družbeno dogajanje, ki nekako išče tudi družbena središča, na katera se lahko opremo. Poleg tega pa ima seveda tudi druge funkcije in kapacitete, da se povezuje z drugimi resorji, in eno takih povezovanje, vsekakor povezovanje kulture in zelenega prehoda. V tem smislu se je zgodila tudi ta sinergija med Ministrstvom za kulturo in Ministrstvom za okolje in prostor, ki sta s pomočjo sklada za podnebne spremembe leta 2024 uspela se dogovoriti za izvedbo javnega razpisa za zeleni prehod v kulturi. Vidimo, da je to tema, ki se krepi tako na svetovni ravni, kot tudi v evropskem kontekstu in vse bolj tudi v Sloveniji. Veseli nas, da je v bistvu bilo zelo veliko prijav na ta razpis. Vidimo, da se projekti izvajajo kakovostno. In v tej luči bi seveda tudi na ministrstvu želeli pozdraviti današnjo konferenco. Verjamemo, da bomo slišali marsikaj zanimivega in da bojo seveda se tudi kakšna mnenja kresala in da bo prišlo ven kaj zanimivega in novega. Hvala.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maserko. And now, dear guests, it's time for our Use, Reduce and Reimagine. Since our mission today is to offer you both theoretical insights and the best practical solutions from our region and abroad, we are deeply honored to open this conference with a keynote address from Julie's Bicycle, the world's leading authority on mobilizing the cultural sector to combat climate change and measuring the carbon footprint of culture. Please welcome Ms. Laura Pando, a culture and climate expert practitioner and the interim CEO of Julie's Bicycle, who has supported over 1,000 creative organizations and local authorities throughout the UK and Europe in taking climate action and building resilience. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Blaszka. I've been practicing the name. I don't know if I got it right. Yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much to our long-standing friends, PiNA and the Museum of Architecture and Design, and to the Ministry of Culture. For inviting me to be here. It's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure to see all your faces. I've been thinking about you in the run-up to this moment. I'm always very humbled, actually, when I'm we are invited, but I personally find it humbling to understand better where it is that I'm going, what is the context, what may be happening in those places. So I did a little bit of research, and I was, as I was saying, very humbled very quickly to realize that actually Slovenia has been leading the way. So I feel a bit straight away uncomfortable that we've been introduced as leading. We've pioneered some areas, but certainly leadership is coming across borders and from different types of organizations across the globe. So I wouldn't say that this is just Julie's Bicycle's work to pioneer at all. So one of the things that I found when researching about Slovenia, especially here in the lovely Ljubljana, is an organization called, or an initiative called EkoKreatura. I don't know if anyone from that organization is here, but I found there's an urban laborative materials from invasive species, and it basically is kind of turning knotweed, Japanese knotweed, which is an invasive species, into something that is actually useful, like paper. And I also found out about Center ROG, and probably forgive my pronunciation, probably I'm not saying it right, which is working on renovation and anti-green washing, which is really much needed. And I guess creatives, from what I read, creatives are getting together to sort of counterbalance the narratives around greenwashing. And obviously the sort of project that is taking place here, and I believe is funded by the Ministry of Culture, the Green Transition in Culture Fund, funding this platform for used materials that we were talking about earlier just before, and I was really inspired about. So there's plenty of leadership. So I'm just going to talk about obviously a little bit of what we've done, because that's what I've been called to be here. But I just wanted to first and foremost highlight that there's a lot to be proud here that is already happening. And from my conversations with Borut just 10 minutes ago as well, which I wish we had to, time to have before, because then maybe my talk would have taken different shapes. So I've rewritten some of it on the go just now. So there you go. I'm just going to introduce myself properly. I mean, obviously I was introduced. I'm Laura Pando, and I represent an organization called Julie's Bicycle. We don't have bikes. Well, we do have bikes, our individual bikes. We don't sell them. But it's an organization, but the founder and ex-CEO, but continues to be involved in the organization, Alison Tickell, always goes on a bike. And when it was first funded by a bunch of people in the music industry, they decided that it needed a rock and roll name. And it was going to be Alison's Bicycle, but she put her foot down. And because they were having dinner at a restaurant called Julie's, they decided to call it Julie's Bicycle. So this is just to preempt many questions that I will have probably otherwise, as to why we call that. But what we do is we work at the intersection of climate change, creativity, and culture. We basically work towards uniting culture and creativity and into climate action to drive it within and beyond the sector. We provide practical solutions, convene and co-create new knowledge with and for the sector, and basically we test and scale this at sector level through the strategic partnerships that we are very lucky to have. We aim at addressing the root causes of climate change, and those obviously are very complex and systemic and very unjust at their heart. So we put justice and equity at the center of everything that we do. When we talk about change, it's just not any change, it's change that actually drives equity and justice. We enable and mobilize creative climate change makers all around the world, and we advocate and drive policy interventions that put climate at their heart. We define culture because I think we found this was an increasingly complex, always question that what is culture? Culture is many things, and I think if you ask what culture is to everyone in this room, everyone will have a slightly definition of culture. So we decided that we will create ours, at least. And this is not a preemptive one, it's just the one that we understand. And it's, I'm very happy to discuss this with anyone who may have different views. Well, we define culture as cultural heritage, arts, and the creative industries. These reflect the places, practices, experiences, knowledge that people have and care for, as well as the values, ideas that shape our world. And culture-based solutions focus on how cultural and creative industries and traditional knowledge systems and local heritage contribute to climate solutions. So that is power. Culture is a powerful force for change. It's the most powerful that we have, really. It challenges and moves us, and it connects us with the ways in which we live now and the ways in which we want to live in the future. And how we use that power now is more important than ever. I guess I wanted to, and this is what I've kind of rewritten very quickly in the last 5 minutes, at the expense of not listening to some of what was said in Slovenian, which probably would have been useless anyway because I don't understand it, but it sounds beautiful. But I wanted to perhaps just give a bit of context as to how I personally feel that this is a power that we must use now. It is more important than ever. I probably don't need to remind people in this room of the global context that we're living. We are seeing our most powerful governments around the world invested in conflict, harm, land grab, genocide. It's a real stark scenario. We are seeing our most powerful economic actors really invested in confusion, in causing disinformation, really kind of powerful corporations really invested in this greenwashing that we were talking about, but also in to kind of really continue to lock us into these fossil fuel futures that we are so entrenched in. And I've been reflecting a lot of that because I felt this in my bones. I felt a real sense of disempowerment. I also have young kids, so I'm thinking a lot about the future, not just for them. Once you have kids, you're kind of the mother of every kid in the world, I believe. That's how I feel personally. So I've been thinking a lot about this and the sort of sense of erosion that my sense of agency, and I believe many people have felt recently in the recent months and years, and how that puts us in a state of paralysis and makes us feel and believe that we're powerless, that we can really stop this. And that's a very, really kind of like dangerous place to be. And I think this is a place that by design we designed to be put in, basically. But this is why I think now more than ever, what we need is completely the opposite. We need trust, we need connection, we need nuance. We were talking about nuance, having a coffee just before now. Organizing this like deep collaboration, radical collaboration, cooperation. We need sharing, we need acting together. And it's only by doing that and doing it together that we will relearn the strength of our collective power. We have it. And I think this is here exactly that the arts and culture have an incredible role to play. We're not a silver bullet in that we won't solve it all ourselves, but we bring something really, really important. Obviously, we have an incredible physical built infrastructure that can become hubs, that can become physical places where the communities, where these people, where our ideas, where the conversations can be had. But we also have the most, we were just discussing it, the perhaps more intangible, I don't want to call it invisible because it's almost like stripping it off is important, but is the infrastructure of the arts and culture, which is not something that I can very easily put a name on or touch, but I can certainly feel it. It's basically where we can turn data and policy frameworks into something that is actually lived. And just one more provocation before I kind of move on to this. We have lots of the data. Science has given us lots of the data of what is happening in climate. There's nothing to be doubted. We have the projections of where we're going to if we do nothing at all. We know where we're going, or rather, what we're running away from. And now I'm asking you, do we know what we're walking towards? That bit is what will make the difference on whether we are able to just run away from the collapse and catastrophe that will end up happening eventually within our lifetimes or beyond for our kids and grandkids, or whether we are able to, within the constraints of that climate reality that we're locked ourselves into already, we're able to devise possible futures. I'm not talking about hopeful, kind of like naive, stripped of any risk or pain. There will be some of that. We're already feeling it. This heat wave that we've experienced, this been the reality for many decades in the global south. And they, by the way, we should be learning how they cope with it, and do that learning and that sharing. But I think what we don't have is that common vision of what it is that we're walking towards. And these possible futures can also be desirable. And while we build them, and we build them together, we can also address other things other than climate impacts that we definitely need to address, but we can also address our societal divisions, our inequality, fight and, be the anti-racist and fight racial injustice, and so on and on and on, and create very cohesive and flourishing communities, which I think is everyone wants that, regardless of what side of the spectrum, policy spectrum you come from. So here are some, I guess we call them trends, but just different ways of acting. And this is not definite, but these are just some ways in which we have identified that the cultural community is acting on this, culture, creative, the arts. It can be through, obviously, as we were saying, through heritage and communities, places like this, opening up to their communities, coming out of their walls and actually working with these communities, involving them, working with the local authorities as well, because a lot of these policies are implemented at the local level. So what are the local authorities' open doors, and how can we just actually get them out of the policy-making big rooms and actually out into the streets to work with us on these visions? Obviously, the embodied organization that is working hard to reduce their own impacts, their own emissions, their own, looking at their practices, their materials, their governance, and obviously the activism that we can do with our own voices is also the design and innovation, those futures those better futures won't be possible if we don't invent and we don't, we have the ingenuity to do that. Deep collaboration. I think that, if anyone, is the most important. It doesn't matter where you sit anywhere else. Collaboration runs across everything, policy and governance and pathfinding at the organizations like ourselves, like PiNA, that are working in just really supporting this transition and this transformation. I was going to ask whether you see yourselves in any of these categories. It probably is more than one. Yeah. I want to see show of hands. Did you see yourselves reflected, or if you didn't, what was missing? Don't be shy. I'm also I'm nervous as well. I also get nervous talking publicly, but I wanted to get to know who was in the room. If any of you identify with any of these categories, yeah, I see some hands. Great.
I see the.
Yeah, I'm gonna take them back so you can see activism. Okay. Well, I'd love to hear about the work that you're doing and how you interpret yourself in that movement. This is an ecology of change and courage. So I'd really love to hear how you feel that you're able to act in this space. And if you're doing something that is not represented here, I definitely would be love to hear about it. So I was going to talk a bit, and I'm just aware of time because we started late as well. So if someone is going to keep me on time, because I'm terrible at this, just show me a hand if I'm going to. I've got 10 minutes, so I'm going to wish through some of this. Okay, I'm going to fly a bit. But our work can be divided in creative climate programs, creative climate change makers, and creative climate policy. And basically, our programs are designed to build leadership, capacity, and sustainable practices across arts and culture as a sector. And we have different programs within that banner, if that makes sense. We work individually with organizations or groups of organizations that want to do this work, and basically it's very tailored to their needs. And we also have a creative climate justice program specifically, which is working with people with lived experience of climate injustice as well. And we basically, actually climate justice runs across everything, but we also elevate it as a sort of pillar of activity. And the Creative Climate City, supporting cities, regions to integrate cultural sustainability into climate strategies. We have Creative Climate Music, a specific program. We're working with the music sector, and we have obviously the Arts and Culture in England Environmental Responsibility program, and then also we work with the British Film Institute, which is another UK-funded institution in the UK that we have a program with. So we work with over 1,500 organizations at this moment, probably more actually. I haven't done the full count, but it is a really rich program of activities. I'm going to zoom into the environmental program because I was asked to do this, which is a program that has been running since 2012. It was a pioneer intervention by the Arts Council England alongside with Julie's Bicycle to make environmental requirements a condition for funding. And at the time, this was a complete revolution. It was not something that happened, and I don't think at this scale anywhere in the world. Pardon me. And basically, that single intervention really, really was the beginning of many, many things. And I'm going to go back to this kind of footprinting element, but I think the knowing that sort of like the simple act of organizations and professionals turning into what this means for them particularly was useful for them to generate a curiosity that potentially, and a sense of agency and possibility that they could do something about it that perhaps wasn't there before. So we support the sector. We obviously have the creative climate tools to do that carbon footprinting. We offer guidance for policy and action planning. We provide resources that are created with the sector, not just for the sector, training and peer learning and knowledge sharing opportunities. And we have some leadership and development programs for NPOs. NPOs are national portfolio organizations, so it's a funded portfolio of organizations, which for the arts and culture is over 1,000 organizations in periods of 3 to 4 years. This one has gone a bit longer because there's been an official review that has stopped the sort of process. There's 4 strands: transforming energies, building-based type of program to really focus on energy, which is basically the single biggest impact that they have within their control and within their remit, and to really work with those buildings on reducing that. The board environmental champions, this is working with board across the arts and culture boards. I don't know if this is the same here in Slovenia, but all charities will have, and organizations will have, a board of directors who are finally and utterly responsible for anything that happens in the organization. So that's the sort of, perhaps the top layer of governance of an organization. So we have a program dedicated to that, to really embedding that at that level. And then Creative Climate Accelerator, working with individual practitioners and freelancers and leading resilience to really open up and go beyond the mitigation, which is basically reducing greenhouse emissions, but actually just looking at how collectively as a sector we adapt. We need to adapt to the effects and the impact of climate. And really understand those risks. So I'm just going to kind of show some stats very quickly. 86% of organizations are integrating environmental principles into core strategies. 70% of organizations took steps to reduce energy use and improve efficiency. So this is something that is widely now absorbed and recognized as something that actively organizations are doing. 73 of the portfolio have produced and programmed work exploring environmental issues. So through this simple intervention, which I believe is also the case here in Slovenia through the leadership of the Ministry of Culture, of prompting organizations to understand their impacts and reduce those potential impacts, is unlocked lots of beyond carbon behavior changes, and is really transforming the sector. We have the Creative Climate Change Makers. So this is basically us working, and this is a program that is so nice actually to be here with PiNA all these years ago, because it was 2017, I believe, that we ran that very first UK. I think we had run a pilot already before in Greece, but I think that was the first kind of proper, it was called CCL, Creative Climate Leadership before, and we've just renamed it, but it was with PiNA through a bit of funding from the EU that we developed this program, and we co-delivered it in Wales, and it was transformative, not just for the people who were part of it, it was transformative for us too. So this is a process that we go through with these artists, policymakers, creative cultural practitioners, to immerse themselves in a program where we go away in a retreat for a week, and then we give support, mentoring, and micro grants, and so on and on. It's for a year, and it really has been transformational. We now have a cohort of over 300 participants across 30 countries, and it's still going. And here's a photo of their first, and Borut, you will recognize Philip Kusasa from Zimbabwe, which we're still in touch with, absolutely inspirational man. And yes, we have now a transformational program that is a global collective, and they're still very, very active. I know I need to rush, so I'm just going to go through the creative climate policy. We work with policymakers. We have 2 decades of leadership and growing global network. We advocate for culture as a vital part of climate solutions, influencing strategies, funding, and international negotiations. And these are just some examples of the interventions that we've driven across the years. I'm starting from the most recent, which is basically we took to COP30 in November 2025, this global campaign called We Make Tomorrow, which basically brings together artists and activists, creative designers and culture, heritage keepers to be united in climate action. And there was over 1.5 million voices represented in that campaign, and we took it to a COP that was very special because the Brazilians were phenomenal in centering justice. They're taking it forward in their country in incredible ways. And I think there's still going to be a few years until we see another COP as good as that. Although it was a failure in so many other ways, with fossil fuels still not being addressed, not even named in the room, by, I think it was just the Colombians who mentioned it, and then basically they created their own fossil fuel treaty outside, which is another incredible initiative that is happening. But just to go back in time as well, the interventions in 2023, for COP28, we co-led the first ever culture pavilion and advanced the global call for joint work decision on culture and climate action. And this was very important. Now the pavilion is something that kind of continues to run in these COPs. Then in 2022 for COP 27, there was a historic milestone. For the first time, national governments recognized cultural heritage in UNFCCC texts on both loss and damage and climate change adaptation. And this was only achieved through the collaboration with the Climate Heritage Network and international partners. So it was not just JB, this I'm talking about, this not just JB, this is just things we've been part of, with some of them we've led, some of them we've been part of. And COP26, we wrote this report and this campaign, The Missing Link, calling, so this has been just to see how the build-up was done. And the very first intervention that actually Julie's Bicycle did was to take over 350 artists and a letter to really bring that voice of the artist for the global conversations in that very, very important COP, which was COP21, when the Paris Agreement was agreed. So we really think that played a part as well. So I've just wished through all of this. We can talk more about this because there's lots of important things that are happening here. We're writing a global cultural stocktake. There's global activism driving cultural responses in November for this year. There is Heritage Adapts now articulating what adaptation means for heritage across the globe. There is obviously the Entertainment and Culture Pavilion. There is the Group of Friends, which is something that actually, I don't know if you're aware of here in Slovenia, but it's an open invitation. The Group of Friends is a group of ministries of culture across the globe. It started with 18, it's now 53 ministries of culture in this group, and they're taking action globally. So here's an invitation. We were part of creating that group. We're part of that group. So we'd love to have Slovenia in there. And because how much time do I have? So I know how. Okay. So just wanted to speak a little bit as well about obviously the theme of today. That was materials, circularity. I think there's something that I wanted. I'm probably too late already. No. No, okay, just shut me up because I can talk for, as English say, I can talk for England, although I'm from Spain. So I just wanted to sort of obviously you will know this, but I think it's really, circularity is absolutely fantastic, and it focuses on designing out waste and closing that loop, and that's really, really important. I just wanted to sort of, and reading then the program obviously of who's coming to speak, I don't need to preempt any of this, but I think it's good for kind of perhaps setting that conversation, is regenerative approaches that goes an actual step further, and it goes towards actively healing and restoring ecosystems to be net positive. So what can we do not just to close the gap of our activities in terms of waste, but actually what can we give back to this planet that has already given us so much, and actually recognize that we're part of it. We are it. We are nature. And we're not, despite our deepest fantasies, we're not at the center of it. We really aren't. And we would be nothing without the web of systems and life that goes on in nature. We're just a tiny part of it. It just happens to be a really kind of able to affect change in nature. But I think we need to move away from this human-centered approaches to everything that we do and actually bring an interspecies and regenerative approach to this. So it goes from creative design, the propositions that we can help restore the biodiversity and empower communities through that design. Who do we involve in this design, in these conversations? We so often design for instead of with. And I think this is something that really fundamentally needs to change, especially if we want really rapid adoption of solutions. It promotes a multi-species approach, as I was saying, so important. Our lives depend on every species in this world, and we're decimating them with our activity. So we must integrate those approaches. And basically what's sustainable, as in what kind of brings us into a sort of balance, versus what brings us towards a mindset of plentifulness, of abundance, instead of like just kind of always trying to find this balance of sustainability. No, actually, let's move into a mindset of abundance, because that's nature. Nature is abundant, and we're depleting it. So let's just give it back. Let's give ourselves and nature back that abundance. And just a quote, we come from cooperation, our cooperation, and can choose to create a thriving and regenerative future through cooperation. So just an example, Civic Square in the UK, in Birmingham, is using arts and culture and big communities. This is driven by people in the community, basically demonstrating neighborhood scale, civic infrastructure for social, economic, ecological, and climate transition. And the question they kind of started with, what if the climate and ecological transition and deep retrofit of our homes and streets were designed, owned, and governed by the people who live there? And that's where they started. And then now, these are some of the principles that they followed. So it goes to speak to this idea of not just circularity, but actually designed with the eco-region, designed for reuse, designed for radical reimagination, designed for neighborhood stewardship. Who owns the visions? Is it for the policymakers to really own these visions, or is it for the people whose futures are locked in and invested in these places? So we're the stewards of our futures, designed to demonstrate, designed for social ecological regeneration, and designed for adaptability. So this is just some publications they have. You should definitely check them out because they're fantastic. There's an exhibition turned into manifesto here as well. So it was an art exhibition that actually ended up just doing this deep consultation and imagination exercise with the people in the place, and engaged over 100 young people through artist-led workshops exploring play, nature, and sustainability, and ended up in a real call to their politicians, to the local policies. Sorry, 2 more minutes. I'm just gonna, these slides can be shared so you can have a look. Obviously, I didn't want to go without mentioning Bio 27, co-curated by Jane Withers, and basically there's lots of other examples. But I wanted to finish. We talked about what is the power more important than ever, but I just wanted to finish, I guess, just to kind of recap on some of the things that I guess we've learned in the last 20 years, and actually the ones that are really driving our next steps now as an organization. We cannot walk towards a future we haven't imagined first. And this is what I was alluding to earlier. If we don't get together, and these futures will look different in different places. If we don't do this exercise, we'll be at the mercy of this confusion and disempowerment that we feel sometimes in our lives. We need to take control. We need to take power. Arts and culture can really drive that. Change that doesn't deliver justice will only perpetuate and replicate the same harmful systems and practices that took us to this point. Injustice doesn't just allude to people, and obviously across race and across geographies, but also species. Justice for our nature. So justice needs to be at the center. The arts and culture must transform itself as a sector. We have work to do as a sector to really be there, but actually we have to do it where we lend ourselves into the biggest challenge that we have ahead of us. And this is the work of actually breaking out of culture, lending ourselves with curiosity and generosity to those actors in our communities and our places that are doing incredible work. How can we help? Lend yourselves, lean into it. And we have to do both things all at once. The arts and culture isn't a silver bullet, but it can be the binding element. And we need radical collaboration across the board. And if policy doesn't lead the change, we must model the change outside of policy until policy can no longer ignore it. I'll leave you with just a quote from Angela Davis. You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time.
Laura, thank you very much for your precious insight, but please stay here with me or alone because we have some extra time for the questions from the audience. So please just raise your hand and introduce yourself and set a question. Not all at once. Please, Nitari and Mami.
Do we have a microphone for the questions?
One, two, sorry. Borut Jefan from PiNA. I will break the ice, as we said in Slovenia. I have two questions, actually. My concern or my question to you is how to tackle the questions about climate change that you reflect upon in a time that we see that the climate change and the climate crisis fell off the agenda globally. I think also in the European Union we talk more about rearm, and global-wise, as you said in the beginning, is quite the situation is even worse. And how to talk about climate change in this setting. And the other one is something that we are concerned about, and we talk about a lot with Anna, my colleague, that is here leading the EkoKreatura project. How to tackle the environmental anxiety, the feeling that we as individual persons or we as a small community, how to confront with such a huge challenge that it's climate change.
As ourselves, as a
Yeah, how to confront with this anxiety, the feeling that we are unable to do anything. Thank you. And I hope that someone else will have other comments or questions. Otherwise, I can talk a lot.
So, shall I take more questions? I'll just answer this one and then maybe someone, yeah? I mean, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this. I don't have all of the answers, certainly. That I think a lot of it alludes to what I was trying to say, perhaps through the talk, is that it's a time where we've seen a lot of backpedaling at best and dismantling of climate policies was happening globally. And so this requires something different of us, yeah? And this is, I guess, one of the last provocations I put at the end. If policy doesn't lead, it doesn't mean that we stop. It doesn't mean that we say, okay, well, if they're not doing it, that's it, we're doomed. We have to take it in our hands. And I think that the answer is, as I was saying, maybe take it to the local and to the sort of agency. And by local, I mean, it sounds like global is important and local isn't. Actually, the global and the local are interconnected. It's a constant travel. And this is the time that requires really concentrating in modeling, in really doing the things that we know that can be done with our imagination, with our hands, with our people. And with those who are willing. And within that, there will be many politicians. Politicians are people like all of us, with feelings, with fears, with constraints, with flaws, with grace, and they're trying. So let's work with the willing, and let's just not stop. I don't think we can stop. And then that's connected with how we talk about climate, which is a really, really important question, because somewhat the word and the concept, and it's been politicized. It's been owned in different ways by different spectrums of left and right, and actually this is at the core of it. Climate is a deeply, deeply personal thing. It's felt personally. I will feel it. I will feel the heat. I will feel my housing when it's flooded. I will be the one suffering it. Individually, and it's felt locally. It will be felt by my community. So I think the response really is to go, when the global policies are not responding, we work with the willing and we work locally and we connect across what is happening. Don't work in your silos anymore. We can't afford that. We need to break those silos, find the connection points. We may have to transform ourselves and let go of some of the objectives and some of the ideas that we have of ourselves. And the language that we use is incredibly important. I think there is something about what people go to in their heads when we say climate change, carbon footprints, that people just generate ideas. We need to talk about things like what we care about. What do we need to preserve? What do we need to protect? What do we need to create? What do you want to see happening in your community? What do you need? What are you missing? Those are the conversations that we need to have at this level if we really want to breach the divides that we're experiencing as societies, not just across the climate discourse, but across everything. we're so divided. There's, we were just saying there's no room for nuance anymore. But if we're not able to sit with the people that disagree with us in principle, we won't be able to build this. We have to do it with everyone. This is not about good or bad people. This is about how we're able to overcome these bigger ideas that attach so closely to our fears and actually open up our hearts to what is possible. Yeah? And we have to do it with everyone. And that responds to the second question, I think, because that's how we overcome anxiety, through connecting, through feeling that it's possible, through doing it ourselves, and through feeling that we're trying and we're doing our best. And that is all we can do at this point, as well as continue to advocate, lobby, and keep really kind of open eyes for when these windows of wider architecture and policy open up, to really be ready to really influence those, right? So.
Hi, I'm Katarina Haben, and I come from the Academy of Music. Thank you for your deeply inspiring and your valuable work and your inspiring talk. And I was just wondering if you could tell us something about music projects, because I think considering sustainability, there is a lot of talk about architecture, visual arts, and about sound and music. Many times I miss research practices, so maybe if you could share with us some of your
There's so much happening in music in the UK. It would be almost impossible to summarize it in a very quick answer. But some of the work that we have been doing, again in partnership, so this is not just JB, this is the name of the game. We're doing these things in partnership now. But basically we've been working with cohorts of local authorities in the UK, with the cultural departments, and because they're obviously putting on gigs and events and so on, and we've created what is called the green code events of the code of oh my goodness, GCOP, the green code of green event practice, basically. Sorry, it's just because we call it an acronym, and we're working with these local authorities to really sort of consolidate across the board, because that's the one part of the problem. A lot of it is about how you go about energy and the grid and eliminating the need for example, generators, for example. So actually this is not a local thing, it's actually a global thing, not a global thing, but a national thing around the grid and how you tackle that. And also industry-wide interventions. So we're getting those local authorities together, and we're getting them to really sort of green their practices across the board. That's one thing. Then there's examples all globally, and there was one of a music festival that actually understands itself as a regenerative festival rather than just a music festival. So it's first and foremost about reforestation and planting trees, and also as well music and other things. So there's ways of reinventing this. There's also there's lots of things happening at the music level. We have a program called ITA that is about international touring as well. Touring is one of the big things, and obviously music is affected, not just music, but also theatre. So we're kind of offering training and support and tools for professionals that want to make their touring more sustainable. So there's lots of interventions, but I think what I'll do probably, I'll follow up with some more resources around music, so you can have a look, so they can be circulated with everyone.
I was just thinking that all these things are more outside, and we're not thinking how deeply vibrations in music that we put out affects us, because it's always about how to make changes outside. Do you understand? Because
completely.
Vibrational things are so embedded in music, so we can make our society with these vibrations better or worse. And we're not addressing this. We're not asking ourselves what we're putting out into this vibrational field. And this is many times so subconscious that we're not aware of what our sound environment does to us.
I love that. And I think Borut and I were just having a really interesting chat about how we, and I don't know much about this, but I've been feeling this because I've had some instances where this has happened, but we're not longer in touch with what our bodies know. We live so in our brains, in our sort of like intellectual, sort of cognitive spaces, and we're locked into such ways of thinking, cultural ways, of thinking about ourselves, that we've forgotten that we are connected to the flesh, to our bodies, and actually our bodies hold so much knowledge and abilities that I think we have forgotten. And so if you're doing work on this, please hit me with it, because I've loved to learn more about it. And Borut, I think, is probably the person to talk to as well, because I think you've been thinking very deeply about this. Thank you.
And now let's make some good vibrations with a big round of applause for Miss Findori. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now it's time to look at some inspiring good practices. First, I would like to invite you to Italy, or more specifically to Venice, home of the non-profit platform Biennale. This initiative brings together national pavilions, cultural institutions, universities, architects, artists, students, local associations, and volunteers to transform materials from temporary exhibitions into valuable researchers for the city and its local communities. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Tommaso Cacciai. Venuti.
Thank you a lot. It's not easy to speak after this 360-degree speech. I will be much more simple and much more ground level. It's not easy for us, even because we're not used to speak in these situations, and we very much thank you for this invite. It's a big honor for us, even because in Venice, cultural institutions are doing their best to ignore us. So it's quite strange for us to be invited by a museum and with ministry people of culture. For us, it's something just incredible. In fact, I don't know if maybe you called us for mistake. In that case, we apologize for her. And we are a little company, and but maybe we have a small, no, what's happening? Okay, no. How can we stop I'm terrible in timing, so shut me up, and with technology, as they already, but to make it, thank you. When we started, our mission, our starting point is obviously you all know Venice Biennale, no? It's one of the biggest art and architecture expositions of Europe and maybe of the world, I don't know, but it's an enormous event for Venice with an enormous impact of Venice. All of us, I was born in Venice. My first job was doing portage at 16 years old in Venice Biennale. Most of us, it's a so big cultural event, that lands on the city like a spaceship, and really changes not only in work matter, but even changes and has changed urbanization around, has changed rental market around. It's a very, very high impact, on the city of Venice. And when we started, it was all about waste, because everything that you see in the Venice Biennale becomes rubbish 1 minute after the end of the exposition, or most of it. We could talk in how artwork has changed in the years, but we don't have time. But most of nearly the totality of that material that you see in the exposition becomes rubbish. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of new material of super material, that wood, glass, steel, textile, no, beautiful materials, both for the building the exposition, 6 months of life, so absolutely new, perfect material, thrown away, dumped, rubbish. And so we were nothing. We were not even an association. We were just a bunch of activists of social and environmental movements of the city. And we just used to go to the Biennale and take the material. We cannot say stealing because we did it at the daylight, but more or less, we took the material. With that material, we made new social spaces in the city. We helped the refurbishing occupied houses. In Venice, we have a very big housing problem, an enormous housing problem. And this is a very big movement of reoccupying empty public houses. And with those materials, we of course were part of that movement. So with those materials, we helped refurbishing these occupied houses. And then one pavilion called us and said, "Oh, we saw what you did. No, can you come and take our materials?" And so we said, "Yeah, of course." We were super happy. We have lots of new material. Then the second pavilion called us and said, "Okay." Then the third pavilion called us and we said, "No." Because we start focusing on one point, no, for us very important, that the sustainability need 2 legs, at least 2 legs. The environmental sustainability that has has to do with material waste and all that stuff, but there's even the social sustainability. Because in all the years that we lived Biennale events, we didn't only see the waste. Biennale is not only the kingdom of waste, it's even the kingdom of bad work. We've seen all kind of things in Biennale. People working without contract, without safety measures, we've seen every kind of thing, no? So we said, we focused on the thing that we were actually helping the system. If we continue to take as volunteers the materials and then making things, social things outside, we were not making a change. If we wanted to make a little change, but a real change in that system of Biennale, we had to put the reuse, the recycling, the rebuilding of the materials as part of the economic paradigm. Because the social sustainability is as important, has to go together. Otherwise, you're just acting like the fishes on the back of the sharks, no? So they can do whatever they like, and then you go there and make the cleaning up. And make some greenwashing for the pavilions that can waste, use, whatever they like, and even make some greenwashing with you that go and do the cleaning up. We were making a mistake. And so we started to say, okay, you have to pay us because we want proper wages, proper jobs, proper safety measures. And we started with the most simple kind of company at the beginning, no. We started to do, and even because we figured out one thing, that was that the quantity and the quality of the materials that you can reuse and you can take has in how you dismantle, no, the pavilion. And so we started to say, we have to do the work, and they will pay much more the work. Pavilions will pay much more the work, because if I do a demolitive dismantling, you just pay, let's say, one guy for 1 day with with a crane, or with that, crash everything, dump everything. No, and so the work is much less. We take away screw by screw and take away even the screws that it's, believe me, it's material, money, and it's so they pay much more the work, so people for living, but they don't pay the dumping, or pay nearly zero the dumping. And I gain double, because I gain the work and the material. With that material, we used to make other projects that could be private, that could be other pavilions, that could be social projects. And the second client, let's say, doesn't pay the material. because it's the reused material, no? So spends less, spends only for the work of the people. So for one it's cheaper, for the other it's cheaper, and we get doubled. And all together, we make less waste. No, that's kind of the first figuring out of our project. And also, the thing I wanted to show is even that it's not only dumping. This didn't stop. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with technology. Be patient. But for example, this pavilion, no? This pavilion was just a story, was an incredible pavilion with Vietnamese, because we don't only have to deal with waste, rubbish, and that kind, even with bureaucracy. This pavilion, there was a Vietnamese architect, Vu Trong, beautiful. We had perfect, lovely time with Vietnamese worker. We learned each other language, other techniques. It was incredible. All this bamboo was from Vietnam. And the taxes to make fixed importation of this bamboo was more expensive than shipping back to Vietnam 3 containers of the bamboo. Come on, no, the nonsense, no? So you have 3 containers shipping all around the world, back and forward, that is less expensive, that make importation. We could have reused everything. So we have the pavilion that dump everything, and the pavilion that they said, okay, if you want it, but it's not possible. It's a problem with everything from China, for example. For all Asia, all the Asia part of the world is cheaper to ship. Imagine the carbon footprint, you know? So this is kind of the things. But I was saying, so the first part of our project was to do the dismantling and take the materials. But we figured out that that was not enough, because the quantity and the quality of the materials that we can reuse, does not only depend on how you dismantle, but how you build. You have to build the pavilions and the thing, thinking that installation obviously has to be well done, has to stay, obviously, but has to stay for 6 months, not for 60 years. And so you have to skill some techniques to build properly, but thinking that in 6 months you have to dismantle that without destroying the material. For example, if you use nails, shooting nails and glue, you have to cut with a chainsaw. But if you use, I'd say something stupid, of course, but screws and bolts, you can take away without destroying the material. So we started to discuss with the pavilion, okay, if you want the recycling of the materials, we have to build the pavilions in order to dismantle it. I cannot assure you to make a proper dismantling and reuse of the material if I don't know how this pavilion is built, no? And if we don't have clear indication on how to build a pavilion in order to be dismantled without ruining. And that was a big upgrade for our company. Because when you get into the building and the dismantling, it has a big upgrade for the company. So we became 5, then we had more people working with us. And this is for us a political issue, the job. Building jobs in a city like Venice that has a monotouristic economy, that has a monoculture of mass tourism economy, that has the worst wages in all the sector, that has the most seasonal wages, that are people working with mass tourism are not able to live in the city of Venice. And this, so building jobs in Venice on a cultural system, for us it's as important as recycling the material. But still we managed that was still not enough not even building the material. We had to enter the designing, projecting, planning of the pavilions. Because, and that was the final, that's the real goal. When this happens, the circle is closed. Because for two reasons. One, very practical. Three reasons. That it's logistics. We are not a city like other cities. We are on water, and Biennale is on the far end of the city. To move pieces of things from Biennale to a warehouse, we have to do 7 rotture di carico. Help me. 7 carico. We have to move from the pavilion. You have to use a forklift, bring it to the shore, a crane, a boat, a crane to get off the boat, a forklift, a van, a forklift to a way. 7 times the material. It's not like here you put it in a truck and you move it somewhere. You have to do 7 times one way and 7 times the other way. So to recycle a piece of wood, you have to make 14. If you make the carbon footprint, is better if you dump everything and buy new, no? And so, but if you plan, for example, now we are making meetings with next 2027 Swiss and French pavilion, no? So you can, obviously, nobody discusses the art project or the architecture project, but it's a negotiation between us and the pavilions, no? That we talk together and we can start planning the next pavilions starting from the materials that are already on stage now, that are now on the exhibition. And so at November, you can just move from Brazil pavilion to Austria pavilion, from French pavilion to Argentina pavilion, no. So avoiding the 14 and avoiding the warehouse, that it's a cost. And that's all a matter of planning. And so it's much easier even to find a second life for the materials. Because when you talk about reusing, recycling, planning is the biggest issue. Because if I have 6 months to plan the second life of a material, I can't. No. If I have to stock it in a warehouse, because maybe, no, it's a big issue. And then there's another big issue, that material is not neutral. I can plan everything, I can make it in advance, I can make everything that you like, but if a pavilion is projected with plasterboard, with plasterboard, this one, drywall. I can build it with the microscope. I can take it away with gloves, but always rubbish is. Not reuse this. I know. This will be always rubbish. So we can say no. We can say no. With this material, we don't want to work. Or say, let's use another material that you can reuse. For example, if this is the worst material ever, one of our best circles, and I'm very happy because here there is Matteo and Claudia, EO architects from Ljubljana that believed in us since a lot of years ago, and this was one of their pavilions, and we do together a lot of pavilions. And was the Brazil pavilion. Here it is. That was all made with raw earth. For example, raw earth is a very traditional technique of building houses, no? And it has an incredible value in bioarchitecture, but also has zero waste. Because that earth, and this pavilion won the Golden Lion in, can't remember? In 2023, all this earth, zero waste, was remixed for the Irish Pavilion in 2024, no? And this was one of the most complete circularity, no? Because if you use a certain kind of material, you can actually have zero waste. Zero waste, obviously, it's quite difficult to have zero waste, no, but earth or wood, for example. And another incredible pavilion that we made was the German pavilion. I don't know if you remember it. This was a pavilion that we worked for a lot of years, lot of months the year before, and they collected everything. Finished. Okay. Huh? Okay, so that was the whole pavilion based on the idea of reusing everything. But for example, and I close in 5 minutes, I wanted to interloquire and say to interact with making space with communities. Now, for example, this was the Belgian pavilion. All the structure, this was a mushroom, all the structure behind with this fantastic wood. And with this wood, we made, and this wood and many other materials, we made a space in a popular island together with the neighborhood that is popular boxing gym with a library and with spaces with kids and everything. You see, this is the wood. This is all the wood from the Belgian pavilion. This is all the wood. The floor was another of the gym with another, and we made this space that now it's open for the community, opened by the community 7 days a week from the morning to the evening, and it's lived by all the community and managed to make 4 jobs with the community, and it was all made by reused materials of PiNA.
Signor Cacciari, la presentazione e i tempi sono stati perfetti, sicuramente meglio del mio italiano. Grazie mille. And now we are staying in Italy, but heading further south, directly to Bologna. Here we have another inspiring sustainable practice in culture called Kilowatt, dedicated to redefining services and community well-being through culture-based urban regeneration projects. Kilowatt has recently opened Serra Madre, a dedicated space for ecological imagination. With great pleasure, I kindly invite to the stage Ms. Chiara Crozzoli, who will share more about this project and the incredible benefits it brings. Benvenuti.
Thank you very much. I'm a bit tiny, so probably you will not see me, but please look at the presentation, it will be fine as well. So good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, obviously, to PiNA at first for this long-lasting, at this point, collaboration, and the presentation board that before is something we really believe in as well, to the MAO and the Ministry of Culture for sure, but also to Tommaso and Laura for their inspirational work before. My name is Chiara, I'm from Kilowatt's team, and today I'm here to present to you our latest urban regeneration project, which is Serra Madre. But I would like to start from the beginning, so basically from the story of our organization, which is pretty much linked to how then we changed in time. Kilowatt, in fact, is now an incubator for social and community well-being innovation. And what we mainly do is redefining services and community-based activities throughout using mainly impact strategy and methodologies. It was initially born as a cultural association in 2012, but then we really quickly shifted to a structure which is the cooperative of work, because as Tommaso said, job in our sector is a thing and it's important to give it value. It was mainly born bringing together different souls and different people that basically shared the same needs, such as, I would say, initially creating a workspace where professional life meets the quality of leisure time. This basically because they believed that this could unlock opportunities for change that generate also sustainable and inclusive well-being practices. So this was the initial idea, but then the project took concreteness once we finally got to, when we finally got to regenerate this wonderful green space in the city center of Bologna within a bigger garden, which is called L'Estero dei Giardini Margherita, and basically gave the possibility to put into practice our vision and to regenerate a space through 3 core drivers, I would say. So relationship reactivation, environmental sustainability, and creativity as a sort of driver to bridge past heritage, which we wanted to respect also in terms of reuse, basically, of most of the materials we found there, to with a new narrative of the same place that could have been more keen to our desirable future vision. So yeah, this is like a really short presentation. Nowadays, after almost 12 years of us working in this space, L'Estero dei Giardini Margherita are now a community hub that, for example, have hosted more than 180 events only in 2025. And it hosts as well co-working, an organic bistro, which is one of the main means we started to communicate in some way to a wider public what was our idea of sustainable consume and attitude towards what we conceive as an ecosystem in which we live. So this was the place when we first entered. Basically, this was built from the municipality of Bologna in the last 1800 and was progressively abandoned in the 1980s. Now, the open space, I would say, it's really broad. We do have also a kindergarten, and the entire garden was regenerated also with cultural farming system and hydroponic systems in order to enter more and more in dialogue with the space itself and with the community that must live it. In fact, we offer all year long cultural program basically because this was since the beginning our way of bringing back citizens to live this space, because it had been 40 years that nobody just entered that space. So how to give the possibility to people to cross by and reappropriate of the space was our main theme, and this we thought like building accessible and more inclusive possible program was our way of progressively also build the community around and build a relationship with citizens at first, and not only with them, but during the last 4 years, we decided to go deeper in our artistic research and mainly focus on 3, I would say, main research areas. And basically, one is dedicated to exploring gender issues from a male perspective as well, in order to get into dialogue with transfeminist theory. The second one is to actively involve diaspora people and culture in order to plan together some desirable future as well, and not like keeping it in our little shells, I would say. And last but not least, our third line, obviously, the one exploring ecological thought through an intersection between art and science. In order to give, I would say, a chance to this third line also to rise, we invested in the past 4 years, between 2020 and 2024, with a new urban regeneration project. No, I had the same problem, sorry. Which is called the Serra Madre. And this is not how it should go. Nope. Sorry. Is this like that? Someone can see that? Because this is directly from Twitter to open a link. Yeah. It's like this was the one that should do. Well, I go on. We don't have the enough time. So basically, yeah, but it doesn't work. No worries, I can go on. It's no worries at all. We invested over 2 million in restoring the bigger greenhouse within the space, and went through 4 years of restoration of something that you can imagine it's not that easy. I mean, it's a greenhouse that must be livable and must become a public event space. With Italian superintendents as well, so you can imagine how fun. But the thing is that we really wanted to create a home and to this line of research in order to represent not only a physical space but also a conceptual framework and methodological approach dedicated to the exploration of ecological issues. Because our idea regarding how we can change things is basically that, first of all, we cannot think that we're going to be alone in change. So thanks, Laura, for your words before. We need absolutely have a transdisciplinary approach in order to keep together all perspectives possible and data as well. But mainly, do not forget that we, I would like to go ahead, that environmental crisis we are living and the difficult times we are going through, as well as complexity, is basically what we call, what we believe is a cultural crisis as well, and an imagination crisis as well. So this is why we want to work within this space on what we call ecological imagination, because we believe we will not be granted survival unless we learn how to tell our story differently and to dream differently. And artists, more than others, can actually help us, we believe, to go beyond what the paradigm still imposes as sort of invisible barrier constraints that actually constrains both thought and action. So our way of putting down this was to basically initially invest, obviously, in a new space, but also in new practices in order to break down these barriers. And basically through the School of Ecological Imagination, so two main formats, ASPU, that it's a laboratory of possible worlds, launched in 2023, and a place, I would call it a sort of gym, I would say, not only because we walk a lot, but basically because it's like a gym for us to try to work beyond the techno-solutionist trap and work beyond these barriers thanks to relation, basically. And in order to create alternative epistemologies, I want to stay in time. So basically the other format is our festival, that draws inspiration from anthropological, philosophical, and ecological perspective and challenges deep-rooted dichotomies as well. So it basically wants to work with data, of course, research, and what we do have to understand in a rational way what's happening, but on the other hand, also helping people, since, as Laura was saying before, anxiety and environmental crisis, this type of crisis, it's an individual thing as well. It's something we must go through in some way, also individually. So doing it, also using our feelings, sensing this anxiety, through sensing this data, which otherwise it sticks to be something fixed that most of us do not understand, I would say, and create more anxiety and fear, not understanding, and not having your space to in some way elaborate or think about it, feel it, and process this thing. So I will close up, basically saying that actually I would like to ask you all a question, and on this theme as well, on this our research. So given these premises and difficult era we live, difficult times we live, can you imagine a desirable future? Can you do that? Is this a practice you kind of try sometimes? What do you think would help you to do this? Can you identify something that could help you to open up, like, also your imagination towards something better, not only sticking to what we have? So thank you very much.
Grazie mille, signora Brussel. And I would like to keep that Italian spirit for a bit longer. Why not? A break is ahead of us. And I truly hope we can get an espresso and a spremuta as good as that ones in Italy. So, dear guests, it's time for some fresh air, coffee, and networking. Let's meet back again here in 20 minutes, so at 11:35. Okay? Enjoy.
Lep pozdrav še z moje strani. Hello, also from my side. I am the colleague of Borut, which has previously held the speech, and I will moderate the panel of policies, culture, and climate action. And on this point, I would like to invite our guests, Laura Pando from Julie's Bicycle, Jean Cobal and Barbara Predan from Futuring, and Tommaso Cacciari from Rebiennale. Please, if you can join me on the stage. And on this point, I would also like to point out and apologize that there has been a change. As previously communicated, Živa Gobo will not be able to join us. So we instead invited, we're very happy to host on this panel Laura, and I hope you will enjoy this panel. So, I broke the ice. Firstly, I would just like to introduce you very briefly. We've heard a lot about both Tommaso and Laura before, but yeah, maybe we can start with Jean Cobal and Barbara Predan, which probably a lot of you know, but they are a member of Futuring, an interdisciplinary research group. Together with their team, they carried out one of the first full environmental audits of Design Biennale Bio 2027 and turned the findings into an open source toolkit for sustainable cultural production. Then we have Laura Pando from Julie's Bicycle. Laura introduced herself before, but we can just shortly say, that is a climate expert and practitioner and interim of CEO of Julie's Bicycle, and Tommaso Cacciari from Rebiennale. Thank you both for the inspirational talks you had before. So now, when we had these short introductions, I will straightforward get to the questions and actually empathized with what Laura's slides said, or Laura said on her slides, that we cannot walk towards the future we haven't imagined first. And I would like to ask you all, what kind of future are you imagining through your work? Or if this is something that you start by imagining something and yeah.
Sure.
I think that's a very complex question to ask straight out of the gate.
I will take it as a compliment.
A part of my practice, a part of being a researcher, I'm also a practicing designer. So I think it's ingrained in my practice. Just designing as an act is already imagining possible different futures that have not yet come to be realized. So I'm not sure if I would say that I think about it actively, but it's just the way that I've been taught in school, not to reproduce futures that are already in the general imagination, but try to create different ones. Hopefully, let's say more positive ones, more inclusive ones, more accessible ones, more sustainable ones.
Well, in my case, because I teach at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design, and when I finish my, let's say, last lecture that I do at the Theory and History of Design, and I teach at the Product Design department, I usually say that it's part of our job actually to imagine the world that we actually want to live in, not just survive when in that world. And in that case, I think when I'm trying to say it, it might sound simple, but it is actually that, I don't know, decades from now, we will still be able to drink fresh water and have fresh water, to have soil that will grow food that it won't poison us, and of course, to breathe air that won't cause us the disease. So this might sound really simple, but it is actually something that is very complex, and it is something that, as a designers, we always have to have like taking in consideration while doing our everyday job in a way. So yeah, let's start with that.
Thank you.
What was the question? Well, I think that regarding our job now and our activities in building, dismantling, and building Venice Biennale and these big cultural events can be a problem for the community and the city, but can also be a resource for the community and the city. What we are trying to do, more or less, with our job, and what I would like to imagine is to help to transform these big events in a resource for the city, empowering the community of the city, and these big cultural events can actually be not just something that arrives and lands on the city, but can, and I am very sure about this, but can be part of potentialing the community and the city, both in a social and an environmental way. And this, of course, needs a different leadership of these institutions, needs a different governance of these institutions, but I'm quite sure that this is the direction that these events have to take.
Thank you. Thank you. And very similar to you, I think my ultimate vision is one that is very simple things that seem not possible anymore. So I would add to that I think one of the things that I think runs through it is I see if the future that I would like to imagine is one that is dominated by connection starting with ourselves, with individually, with our bodies, with the places and the people that are around us, and connecting the past with the future. We can't make sense of the future without really understanding the past as well. So I think it's all about connection, but it's all looking towards a future where not just my kids, but every kid in the world can access the very basics. We were talking about the abundance of nature. We just really need to connect with that abundance and really sort of stop seeing ourselves as separate from nature, but actually we are it. And we can thrive within it.
Thank you. This inspired me for the next question. I will start with you. You pointed out that connections are important and also in the interdisciplinarity and having the right communication. What does it mean, having the right communication? Like, how can you explain to us what is the right approach towards that right communication? And maybe if I can also add, if this is somehow connected or can be connected, of how can we fight greenwashing, for example?
So I don't think I have the right approach. I think there is an approach that everyone has to find within their own contexts. I think, well, to me, if I go back to the first aspect of your question on how we become more interdisciplinary, I think it's we as sectors and as different, we all wear different hats and we see ourselves as actors in this society in different ways. And we're always championing our cause. I am championing the arts and culture to act on climate. And then we have, civic leaders. I'm thinking about, for example, my husband. I was just talking to you too about my husband championing mental health through connection with arts and nature. And there's faith groups in our community that are championing that spiritual connection and identity that is born out of faith and religion. And then we have etc., etc., etc. There's so many segments of us and many ways of understanding ourselves in our lives. And it's necessary because, we're very different. So we're all trying to find how to belong, I guess. But I think we're at a point where we're potentially too fragmented. It's an individualistic sort of a mindset that we bring to pretty much everything that we do at the moment. And I think we need to break those walls that contain us and our identities and really sort of reach out. So, if you're working with, trying to work on something regenerative for your community or bring arts, just think about who are the other groups that are already connecting with one another, first and foremost, but also with some of the ideas, some of the places, and some of the visions that you want to build. And don't leave anyone out. I would say that that's the thing. And allow yourself to be invited into other spaces too, when you won't be necessarily defining or driving the vision, but actually build onto someone else's visions too, if that makes sense. So, yeah, that was a long question, but answer.
And about greenwashing?
On greenwashing,
maybe having right difficult communications also. You mentioned something in your speech that we don't need to talk just with or address just like-minded people, but also talk with
I think I did say a little bit of it in that. I think that the language that we use and how the arts actually can lend itself to have some of these conversations that are unpolarizing. I think that's an argument for us as a sector, creatives, designers, wordsmiths, and playwrights and performers, to really lend themselves to that conversation so they can be possible without the threat and without the fear. And I think, we talk a lot about, it was necessary to talk about climate and climate impacts and science and carbon and all of these things, but I think at the heart of it is very simple things and things that everyone can relate to. And I think this is the most important thing. We need to find a language that reaches out. And so we may have to drop some of it. Greenwashing, we can fight it with connection. with an understanding and finding what are our truths. And part of the problem with greenwashing is that we don't know what our truths are collectively anymore. So I think that's part of it.
Wonderful. I will continue with connections and kindly ask Jean and Barbara both, or you can choose which one will answer. As we've heard, you actually measured the environmental impact of a biennial, and Julie the Bicycle actually supported this process. What did that collaboration bring to you? And maybe a more technical question, what did you measure? What did you find out? Let's start with these two questions and then...
Maybe the first thing is audit is quite strong word because it actually would take measuring also the previous biennials which we tried in a way just to look at it, or in order to make kind of to comparison and so on. But that just to give the kind of a few steps back. So by Jane Withers, we were kindly invited by the 27th of Biennial of Design to actually to have a kind of a environmental, and also we connected, because I really agree with you, it's always environmental and social. It's not just one way or another, because it's very much connected. So we were kind of invited to take overlook how we are actually producing the at that time current biennial, but also in a way to compare it with the previous one. So that was the initiative start of what we did, and we in a way started from different angles about the measurement. Jean was ahead of it, so I will let him talk about it. But of course, what I think it's quite important, we also collected quite a lot of stories during the biennial, which was starting with other groups that were also working on it. And of course, we kind of gave them directions, what they could take as an advantage to make, I don't know, a less footprint or different kind of connections, as it was said. But I think at the end, the narrative stories, what we learned, also what it didn't work, I think that was something that was quite important, because we then make a kind of a audio stories, audio narratives, where we were very kind, okay, or frank in a way. So we were saying, yes, we tried to do this, but at the end, we still needed to, I don't know, use this kind of shipment in order to get this, and it didn't work, even though we really tried to. So yes, I think that's kind of was really important. And also at the end, we came up with some kind of a toolkit for the museums, which then got, I think, a quite interesting new life afterwards. Yeah, we can come back to this later.
Yeah, when we were invited as researchers. And the theme of sustainability within cultural production was quite new to us, so we had to inform ourselves. We did extensive research on the topic and realized that there's a lot of knowledge out there, but it's dispersed. So bringing back to connections, we tried to, with our toolkit, connect all this knowledge that already exists in one manageable hub. That would be freely accessible as well as open source, so it could evolve further with new findings, ideally. And then once we did all of that work, it was already quite far along in the process of the biennial, so we couldn't do a holistic audit. It takes so much time, it is so much research. We did just a rudimentary investigation in certain aspects of the Bio 27, as well as just juxtaposing that to previous ones. So we focused on initiatives that Jane Withers and her team, as well as the architects, did in terms of trying to lower the environmental impact of that specific biennial, which was mainly rethinking how to use, how to make exhibition structures. For example, one of the previous ones used aluminum tables made out of virgin aluminum, which is a horrible material to use in terms of CO2 emissions. And Bio27 decided to kind of not build anything permanent, but borrow a lot of logs and create new temporary structures made out of those logs and then return them back to the supplier. So kind of closing the loop. When we did then the calculations, we realized that there was so many logs that all of the efforts, I mean, it was better than like a firewood. All the efforts, the manual labor that it took to transport, I think it was 5 tons of logs up the stairs, as well as the transportation from the supplier to the museum was, in the end, it was better than using aluminum tables. But it was not that much better than we initially thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we were looking also at transport, comparing that to a previous edition where it functioned as design-a-thon with people coming from all over the world, mostly by planes. And then in Bio27, they tried to do as much of it as possible online to reduce the amount of travel. And then we also investigated the possibilities of the building itself, calculating how much energy MAO could produce if they installed solar panels on its south-facing roof. And we realized it could not only power itself for a whole year, but additionally, I think it was 53 Slovene households just from that one roof. And then I think we were also looking at the possibility of rainwater. Yeah, if they collected the rainwater, it would essentially become a self-sustaining institution. I think those were the main ones.
Wonderful. And these findings are, us here, we can find them somewhere on the website. You actually structured it in a toolkit, which can be downloaded, and also in a physical form, right?
Yes, it is. And also we are very happy that it actually has a life on its own. So we know that Theater Glay is actually quite a lot of using it for their setups. We at the Academy of Fine Arts, we are actually using it. We have a PhD student who is actually, in a way, again, too big of a word, but she's auditing, let's say, in this she's trying to do the audit of our end exhibition each year. So it's very useful. Yeah.
Because my next question would be if you actually tracked since your launch, who has used, how many...
We don't track it. Unfortunately, we don't have the possibilities, but yes, we are very happy to hear when someone comes with information back to us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a question for Tommaso. Since your speech, I had something in mind to ask you, but I will do it now publicly. I think we would receive an interesting answer. So you're redirecting, let's say, materials from closed Venice Biennale exhibitions to open spaces as well, or to bringing back to communities. We saw that you made a cafe, you made furniture for a cafe and for a public space. And I'm curious if there was a shift in how actually institutions has approached towards you, or how, for example, the Venice Biennale Foundation relates to you, to waste and the material reuse. Like, would you say in these 20 years the relationship has improved, or is getting worse? How does it work actually? You are a part of the team, in a sense of how do the pavilions know that you exist and they call you, how is the system of communication, let's say. Let's go back to the connection, communication.
So, complicated.
That's my question.
Complicated. From the institutional point of view, no?
Yeah.
Venice Biennale is a foundation that directly runs the main space Corderie in Arsenale and one pavilion in Arsenale, and then the central pavilion in Giardini. Stop. All the rest of Biennale is run directly pavilion from pavilion. With the institution Biennale, we had very few contacts in the past. Now they hate us. It's a governmental institution. The president of Biennale is named directly by the prime minister. It's a very political naming. And you know what's happening in Italy, no? We have a Ministry of Culture that is nearly saying that the earth is flat. The president of Biennale is this incredible person named Buttafuoco, used to come from that esoterical Nazi kind of thinking, no? Lefebvre, from Lefebvre, that kind of thinking. And they really, they ignore us. It's 10 years that we are asking. Biennale, if you've been there, has a lot of empty spaces. What we used to do in our storage before the triangulation, before we came in the planning, before the more and more pavilions, we managed to end the circle. But we say, why don't you put one of your empty spaces to do a warehouse inside? They have space. And so we can make, or you can make, because this is how we do a job that actually is the cultural institution that should do, like the library of materials that will be ongoing here. It should be the institution itself that does our work. Then we have to change work, but we say, put an empty space, make a warehouse of materials, make a thing so curators, artists, architects can come, can choose online, can already knows materials that don't move from Biennale. They answer that they don't have air conditioning on that spaces, empty spaces, so they cannot do anything like this. I mean, Biennale is an institution that in years they got more and more slim. There are very few people contractualized by Biennale, very few. And everything is externalized. And so they just don't care, no? And so Biennale with us has absolutely no contact. We don't have a relationship, and it's getting obviously worse and worse, even because in Veneto, in Venice, government, right, they don't even believe that climate change exists. They're telling it in the newspaper every day. We are negationists now. Italian government are, they negate climate change. The government of the region, the same. The government of the city, the same. The president of Biennale is this kind, since 2 years, this kind of person here. We are completely alone. Our relationship is only with the single pavilions or with people that kind of, how can we say, organize the pavilion for the cultural institution that runs the pavilion. So every year, we don't have to start everything from the beginning, but more or less. No, it's a relationship that every year has to restart. And even thanks to with some pavilion, we have a very strong relationship. No, for example, with Swiss Pavilion. that organized a kind of, how can you say, a connection between 22 different pavilions, and we started this project, this Green Lion project. So more and more pavilions are more sensible to the themes of reusing, recycling, rebuilding, but there is no institutional relationship with Biennale. And it's not simple, even the relationship with the different pavilions, because you were mentioning connection, languages, greenwashing. Connections are very important, but there are lots of washing, there is even a social washing. If you look at Biennale, every Biennale has a pavilion that wants the community to get in Biennale, that wants the Venetians to come and make their voice in Biennale. We hate it. We hate it. That is kind of social washing. We feel like the good savage, the good indigenous. Come and look at the indigenous, and we really hate it. There is all kind of washing. Every Biennale is decolonial, per forza. Decolonial, then when you step out of Biennale, all of that decolonialism evaporated, And greenwashing, it's the main theme of all Biennale, so I think that language and action are not, you cannot divide language from action. You cannot only speak, you cannot only show something in your exhibition to be decolonial, to be social friendly, to be not greenwashing. You have to join action and language. And we had some pavilions that made this in a very powerful way. I don't think we have time, but for example, the German pavilion that we showed before did the opposite. In that German pavilion, for 6 months, they called 22 universities from all around Europe to make workshop of refurbishing and put these students and their material, they spread it around the city. They found local association groups thing and said, and that's the opposite way to do. That's a good thing to do. So they put money, materials, students, all the power of Biennale at the service of the community. So they took Biennale out, and they made a lot of work, but that's another story. But there are ways now to do. The most important thing is that, language and action has to go together. Otherwise, everything is washing.
Okay, thank you. That was very powerful. It was. I wanted just to add that actually you were mentioning also the importance of social sustainability. So you were also employing people in a way, like also probably Venetian residents, and pointing out that this is important. So I just wanted to say that you're actually also the change maker in a way, no? There, not just, of course, I think, yeah, big one. Big one, yeah, and it's definitely not easy. I will have a more a question for Laura. Actually, if they would, Biennale would want to track how much actually did they reuse, or how much carbon footprint did they actually manage to maybe save or create, what would you advise to them?
Thanks for that question, because actually I was going to send a provocation at the back of the very, good insights that you put in, the kind of how difficult it is to really do that. It is possible, obviously, if you put the resource behind, and there's ways of tracking everything that goes in and out and what ends up in London and what doesn't and so on, and then you can get to a figure. Now, the provocation that I was going to send was slightly different, because you said something that was really, really interesting. You said, so, you know, we tried to sort of like with these logs and what it took to then try and sort of reuse them and rehouse them and actually just find them a second life. That by the time that you figure it out, it was almost like the same carbon footprint or even more to actually reuse them. And I think you kind of mentioned something like that as well in our conversations. So I just wanted to throw, I mean, it's really useful to understand the output of our actions for creating a sort of almost like a framework of principles of understanding of, okay, these materials and these things will be really kind of like energy intensive or material intensive. And then you develop this set of principles in your head, and the more you exercise them, like you would a muscle, they become second nature. And then it's not that you have to stop tracking your footprint, but you become very good at it the more you kind of look into it. Now, it can't be the only dimension. I just wanted to really throw that, because there will be instances that maybe reusing wood for whatever quirk of the, whether, you know, in this case, Venice being this kind of water city that needs this fork lifting and trucking, and, you know, and that may actually increase the footprint. Now, we have to think about the two things: the longer term life of these materials, and also, most importantly, if we don't reuse them and then go and these need to be bought again, either by us or by the ones who never received those materials in the first place as a reused, you know, and redeploy thing, then what we're feeding the wrong wolf, basically. What we're feeding is this market of overconsumption that is driving deforestation, mining, pollution of our water, and at the same time is then obviously producing a sharp decline in biodiversity, is changing the land use of our places, communities are getting displaced, and this goes on and on and on. So carbon footprints don't capture this, don't necessarily tell this story, but those stories are real, and actually these stories are happening really far, far away from where the impacts are being, where this, you know, our materials are being used, you know. So this is something that we really need to think about, and obviously avoid as much as possible these big spikes maybe on energy, or, you know, try and kind of not have polluting, you know, and, you know, power generators, and, you know, we need to think about these solutions. But I think we can't get caught up in the concept of a carbon footprint alone. I think when it comes to materials, specifically materials, there's a large story behind of environmental erosion and social erosion that happens elsewhere, and that we continue to feed if we don't find a home for those materials, basically. So I think it's really, really important that in this particular case we don't get caught. And I was going to ask you after your example of Germany, or before rather, because it sounds uphill, mate. It sounds so uphill for you in the context that you're working with, you know, without the support of the institutions, without the true support of the Biennale. You know, it sounds hard. It sounds like you're kind of carrying a lot of weight. And I was going to ask you where you find your joy, where you find the strength and camaraderie and collaboration. And it sounds like this Germany example was wonderful. I love what you said about the Biennale stepped outside. This is what I meant by breaking our silos. We need to step outside of the constraints of what we think we are, and actually using the Biennale and the design of it as a way of really deeply engaging with the communities that will then receive those materials. Oh my God, that sounds phenomenal. So yeah, I just wanted to share those two things, which connects a little bit with the footprinting. Of course you can do it, you know, you can measure everything from transports of things, and you can do it, and you can spend a long time analyzing things. Now, I think what we know, we now know what is actually really driving emissions, and we know the things that we need to do. I think continue to capture what you can and what matters, but just don't get locked in just in the carbon footprint, I would say.
I would totally agree with that. Yeah, just be caught in the measurement of the CO2 and so on. Even though there might be something, I just remember when Jane Withers were talking about an exhibition that they did at the Design Museum, and they wanted to do it completely sustainable and everything, and they tracked everything and they measured everything, and of course they want to have everything disassembled at the end, and everything, nothing, no glue was used and so on. But at the end, when they measured everything and they completely forgot about this little thing, a screw. This little screw, when they actually measured how it is done and how much energy and how many of them they used, she said at the end they had a saying, don't get screwed by a screw. So it was crazy. Yeah. But nevertheless, knowing this, they learned something. So next time, of course, we do assembly and disassembly differently and so on. So it shouldn't put us down in this way. And I completely agree by going beyond the CO2, going beyond also or understanding how to have different narratives and different stories, because when we started, when Jane, and of course with Julie's bicycles, the workshops and so on, when we were doing this job, one of the things that Jane just asked us, like passing by, but at the end just do some kind of a workshop here at the museum. And at that workshop, actually, so many people from different museums came, and we did a small workshop. We told them what we come up with this work for the half of the year. But at that workshop, actually, when the museums from different museums, people from different museums were actually working in the groups, discussing what is their problem, how they could reconnect. At that time, I actually could say that it was the seed, in a way, was born for what we see here at the museum that has this material bank or library and so on. So this was something that then I think stayed with Maya, and she actually then initiated the project further and so on. So this is why we have this today, and I'm really happy that I really hope that soon will be online, and then we will be able to to give life to this all the stuff that was actually before something that no one dared to step into, but now it's like I don't know, a treasure. what we can get. So this is the stories that we can then get, and I think Jean can tell us more how many this kind of a workshop he and Tamara, because it's actually three of us that were working on this, how many museums they were actually then coming back to this kind of workshops and so on and doing the work. So I think it's rewarding actually. Maybe part of the joy that hopefully Tommaso also can find. So.
Do you feel invited, Tommaso, to answer what brings you joy? Or this is...
Maybe being too drastic. I mean, a lot of joy in our job. We love our job, no? I mean, working in... and that's why I'm so sure now that this could be a resource for the community and the city. When you work in cultural... in the cultural life, it's the best job in the world. We're now building things, and you speak with great artists, people from all around the world. No, it's very satisfying, no, when you build something, and it's satisfying. Manage to build even independent jobs, no, and in a city like Venice is very important, because Venice is losing all of its residents, all of its residents. We're now less than 49,000 people, residents in Venice. Last year we had 32 million of tourists in 1 year. 32 million, 49,000. No, there is kind of a scale mistake. No? And this destroys jobs, makes the city weaker. Because what makes a city strong, like in agriculture, is the biodiversity of economies, is the multiplicity of jobs. It cannot be one. Like in agriculture, if you make one monoculture, you ruin the soil. You don't make it stronger, no? And so managing, we are a drop in the sea, obviously, but it's kind of an example. If you manage to build a winning experience, because we have not failed, we are getting bigger and we're not going back, no? And even economically, you manage to build jobs, reducing waste, and making people, families, we all have little children, making able to stay and live in Venice and work with culture and not with tourism. I mean, it's a big thing that gives us a lot of joy. And we are alone in an institutional line. I don't know, but we are absolutely not alone in an horizontal line, because we are part of a very big network. In Venice, there is a lot of activism, a lot, more than Milan, more than Rome. No, and the little magic happened, with that German pavilion. It was the connection between a social space that's called Sale Docs, that it's a social space run by a cultural association that makes exhibition and cultural work with a very high program, that knew the curator of the German pavilion. Sale Docs put us in connection with the curator. So Sale Docs, a social space run by an association. Curator, Biennale. We started talking with them, and then these 22 students had to sleep. And so we put in connection the social center, occupied, squatted social center, where they slept for 6 months. So another little piece of connection. And then going around to the city, they found the housing movements, And so the party, other team, the parties of Biennale, they spend more money for the parties than for the job of building the Biennale, German especially. And they chose not to make the big exclusive party summer, but to make like a popular sagra, I don't know how you say, in the middle of this very popular neighborhood that never seen not even a city councillor in the elections, abandoned, where there are a lot of occupied houses, and make a big party for all the neighborhood with the German ambassador. This neighborhood really never seen one politician, abandoned. So thank you, Assemblea Sociale, per la casa, and the activists occupied the house behind him, and so crazy mixture and connections of things, and with the money that the pavilion gave to the social center to make the people sleep, they opened the popular gym and things that we saw before, and then again, the Biennale. So this kind of magic, this kind of social connection horizontally gives us incredible joy. You feel part of something that, unfortunately, now it's only in a horizontal way, and there is no institutional verticality that could help a lot.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you, yeah. On this point, I will just ask if someone has a question. If not, you are welcome to address them after the second panel, when we will have the break. And I'm sure we would have a lot to address and to talk more, and I have so many questions written here for you, but we have to conclude, to give the word to others, and to keep the schedule, to be on time. So yeah, on this point, I will also conclude with actually a line from Laura's slides. I felt very inspired. I'm sure I'm not the only one. It was written that we cannot walk towards a future we haven't imagined first, and this is also the first what I ask you. And I think from what we've heard from Ljubljana, Venice, London, UK, like all over the world, I think you are exactly doing that. And I think what we've heard today is that we're not waiting for the policy, for something that comes from outside, but rather, or not waiting for the permission, but like taking things in our hands, modeling the change until it can no longer be ignored. So thank you for the inspiration and motivation. And
let's give a big round of applause for Anna and for guests. Thank you so much. Space is not just an empty frame to be filled, it's the tissue that connects us. And when art and Spain join forces with ecological consciousness, they don't just change the environment, they heal and bind the community. Let's set this quote by Ghanaian British architect Sir David Ajayi as the foundation for our next panel, Ecological Imagination, Art, Space and Community. To introduce our amazing roundtable guests, please first give a warm welcome to our moderator and host, Ms. Maya Vardian from the Museum of Architecture and Design. Welcome.
Okay, so we are approaching to the last panel and the last discussion. And in fact, the common ground of this discussion will be the space and, of course, ecology. If we understand ecology as a kind of, let's say, group of organisms, of beings, not only humans, that interact with each other in a kind of spatial surroundings. So we will talk about urban spaces, about neglected spaces, we will talk about places, what creates, in fact, a place, and, of course, about communities and how we create these projects. So I would like to invite now on stage my panelists. First, Maša Cvetko, Marin Nižić, and Chiara, that we already heard earlier today. So we will focus in a kind of situated practices that they do. And I envision this discussion as a kind of going through steps of the projects they do, trying to detect a kind of methodology they use and also learn from each other. But I will just briefly introduce the guests. Maša Cvetko is an architect and co-founder of Prostorož, which is a non-profit urban design studio established in 2024, when you were still 2004, apologies, while you were still studying at the Faculty of Architecture in Ljubljana. And since then, Prostorož has become one of the Slovenia's pioneering practices addressing the social and environmental challenges facing contemporary cities. And I will jump to Marin Nižić, who is a designer working across strategic design, visual communication, cultural production, and community development. He leads Urbani Separé, a Rijeka-based collective founded in 2014, 10 years later as Prostorož, and holds a degree in industrial design from the University of Zagreb. He is also currently completing, and you are still completing, the postgraduate studies in urban studies at Delta Lab, the University of Rijeka Center for Urban Transition, Architecture, and Urbanism. Chiara Cruzoli, you met before, but just maybe if somebody is new, very shortly, she's a cultural manager at Kilowatt in Bologna, where she supports the coordination and administration of cultural and community-based projects. She studied innovation and organization of culture at the arts at the University of Bologna, and combines expertise in cultural management with a strong interest in collaborative, in socially engaged practices. So let's start with the beginning, speaking about places, speaking about spaces. You usually encounter a kind of, never a tabula rasa, but a space that is not defined, or a space where you see a potential. So how do you see this kind of existing spaces? How do you select them? And in fact, what is the main driver that you approach them and then you decide to change it? And try to have in mind also the sustainability and the ecological perspective that is in fact a kind of ground for this discussion. So where does this transformation begin, of a place begin? Maybe.
Okay. How we approach a certain place or a space before it becomes a place. It's something that always triggers us with something, so that we see a potential in this space that could become a place. So it could become function better, or it could support the communities better. So what we do first, we always start with observations. So we try to understand how the place works, and we go to we go in the space, we observe what is already there. So if there are people using it, how they use it, where are they walking, what activities are happening there, if there are happening, where is the greenery, if there is any equipment, so how the space functions. And then there is another part of analysis, which is also very important, is talking to the people. So always, again, going to the people and using very typical methodologies such as interviews, questionnaires, focus groups, workshops. So as much as possible information that we get from the people to understand also their point of view. So what are their needs, and how then we try to actually connect things that they say with our observations, so with the place. And then we address the main issues and start also finding the solutions. So this is just the beginning of the process, right? So we start with solutions, also testing the solutions again with the users. Usually we do it with a very small interventions. So something that can be low budget, that you can easily transform, change, and then again observation happens. So evaluation again of this transformation, and after evaluation, actually the space can be prepared for a more long-term transformation if that is needed.
For example, to be concrete, you did a work in South Konaselje, which was also connected, in fact, to one of the biennials. We pick it up, you started, and then we also partially join. And South Konaselje is, in fact, a socialist modernist neighborhood in Ljubljana, where public space has become dominated by more than 4,000 cars. And originally it has been planned for 500. So it became, in fact, a kind of huge parking. And then I know that you created residence assembly, working groups, gradual spatial interventions. But just speaking about this participatory process, you are still architects and urbanists and designers that usually come to this kind of situations with a kind of preset ideas, you know, like kind of vision. So is it really truly starting like from a blank page, or you already try to come together from both sides, you know?
Yeah, of course we come from both sides, because also in South Konaselje, for example, what we heard while being there for certain years and talking to the people, we heard that they have a lack of community space, and there was this empty building, but they did not find a way how to run this building. So how to find a model which would enable the space to be activated. And that's why it was really a good opportunity, this Biennale, where we, actually from one participant, we got this idea about library of things. So a service which was established through Biennale, together with support of Regional Development Agency and also with a co-working Polygon organization, which helped us how to study really well similar institutions, or not institutions, but similar initiatives that ran already around Europe. So how to establish management model and funding model, and then this gave us opportunities to test also this activity in the space. So at one point we brought in the space a new service, and from the other point we also opened the space for the locals to have the opportunity to use the space for their own activities. And maybe I can add here that also what was very important in this process, that even after the opening, it was very important to track also all the exchanges that happened in the library, so to be sure, so that every year we had numbers, how many objects were borrowed, which objects were borrowed mostly, which were not borrowed at all, so that we knew that we can give them away, which objects are still in need, who were the people who were borrowing, how much money did we get from the memberships or from whatever. And then we had few years to again accommodate the model of running, and then after I think 3 years we could handle it over totally to our colleague, who then established its own association, and now he, I think, established around 12 other library of things across Slovenia, always changing a bit this kind of model according to the local context.
Super, thank you. That's the way to go. And also in the Biennale we heard that in fact at the end these kind of projects, it's very important that create that kind of also economical value in that sense, social value.
I would like to connect because as we were firstly talking about what is actually a professional approach and hyper defined and well done with a starting point and an ending point, a clear ending point. I was thinking about this expression I really like about coming from environmental humanities, which is arts of noticing, right? So what you were explaining and designing, it was actually in my head, was entering into a space with this kind of ability, I would say, because it is an ability and a kind of something you have to put into practice. It's not something that it's taken for granted at all, I would say. Basically because we do have this attitude in approaching spaces as if these were blank spaces, blank pages where to write. And most of the time we approach these spaces with our own idea, our identity, and I don't know if rational or irrational willingness to in some way step in proving our identity, regenerating that space. And this is a big error. This is actually a fail most of the times. And what we learned like on our skin was basically not to do this because we couldn't. We just realized we couldn't. Basically because it's never something you can write on, and it's not only about how people are living, like Serre were an abandoned space, so we could design like totally from the start how to live that space. But we realized that we were not the only one and people were not the only one. This is the anthropocentric way of living spaces, right? We entered a space where an ecosystem was already there, so how to dialogue with other forms of living things and worlds that are there, and will be there, have to be there as well. So taking track of those kind of living ways as well, and making a part of your identity. I think it's a brave way, in some way, to approach spaces in order to turn them to places. This is, I truly believe, constant observation and practices you were talking about are the baseline, in order also to remember that we can control things, but most of the times things changes out of our control. So basically, tracking is obviously useful and must be. It's a practice we have to learn how to take over in time, but like keeping in mind nothing, not even our way of tracking things can be the same over time.
Okay.
What is your methodology?
I'm remembering the question again.
Yeah, in fact, how do you approach a kind of potential space? How do you approach towards the change? Because also you are an industrial designer by training, and I think I myself as an architect, so maybe I'm asking these questions also from a frustration, how to in fact step out of your comfort zone, which is your profession. It is embedded in a way in your genes and a way of thinking.
I want to make a short introduction also, just to try to somehow explain Rijeka, Fiume, the city I'm from. In English, it's called river. So the name of the city is basically focused on the ever-present water in my city, and it's a very interesting place to be born in and work in, because it's basically a museum of everything that makes the world wrong. So the city developed because of the Suez Canal, so it developed because of connections to the New World. It developed as a port city for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So we were also basically just, until today, infrastructure for climate change, for global warming, but also different types of imperialism, colonialism, and so on. So it's very interesting to live in such a city, which in the last 30 years since Croatia, my country, exists, sort of is, let's say, on the margin somehow. On the margin because if we consider the whole country, it's a bit more progressive, a bit more left-leaning, but also it was never part of, imagine your average Croatian holiday on the coast. So that's not Rijeka. Rijeka is a port city. So there's a lot of basically to do in the city, and that's why we also consider Urbani Separe, my organization, basically an alternative city council, an alternative municipality, that basically whatever we want to do makes sense, and we need to do it because problems are everywhere. So we also work with different neighborhoods, different communities, different ecosystems, the river itself that gave the city the name. And I know it was a big introduction, so I'm trying to remember the question again. But what I wanted to say also is that the organization consists of around 50-60 people who actively work in it. 6 of us are employed, so it's not just my perspective as a designer, but different people, ecologists, sociologists, architects, different perspectives of what the city should be. And you were asking how we approach maybe places, not as a blank slate. We work with building different narratives, different stories, but I guess we will get to that maybe later.
Yeah. Speaking about these participatory processes, you mentioned, Tommaso, action and the language, and I would like to come to the question of language, because different professions, I mean, we, of course, understand that interdisciplinarity is very much needed for these kind of processes, but also different professions speak different languages, and to, in fact, come to a kind of common language where you can communicate and you can really work together might be quite difficult. So if I'm correct, Marin, in Quartera project, you even curated a kind of imaginary local council and a dictionary of collection action. So it seems that you are also working with different vocabularies. And I'm curious, why did you decide, and I think in more projects you work with that, why did you decide to create these vocabularies or these languages? Is it because to improve the communication, or it's something that you built in order to address the topics that you are interested in and you develop?
We talked with Masha a lot about this in the last few months. In Croatian, we call this methodology snađi se druže. Maybe we would, we could translate it as fake it till you make it somehow. Fake it till you make it, maybe. It's about, it also brings us to how you started your presentation with how can we even get to a future if we cannot imagine it. But what we do is basically we manifest this future in real time. So you were saying this in Croatia, the lowest form of governance is local councils. So this is like a neighborhood level of, let's say, political organization. They have elections, and that's the way you, let's say, redistribute bits and parts of budget to make some local change. In theory, it sounds amazing. As it is written in law, it's the best thing in the world. But of course, it doesn't work. So in 2020, when Rijeka was the capital of culture in Europe, we started with these fake local councils, so actually inviting the whole neighborhood to be councillors. We made some decisions together, and the budgets we had from the capital of culture, we distributed somehow together to create actions in this abandoned factory in the city center. And then we developed this methodology further to work with the river in the center of Rijeka, which is in a horrible state. It's absolutely disgusting. And we called it a nature park. So we had this press release calling it the newest nature park in Croatia and in the world. Albania now took our spot. So we actually collectively imagine ourselves as rangers. We take care of the park. And this is actual, like, citizen science, actual workshops, actual walks. So obviously we are aware of what is around us, but we approach it as something which is important as it is. And it's maybe easier with this faking to imagine the future ahead.
Jana, do you have something to add regarding the language, or maybe to share with us your participatory processes? Also, perhaps conflicts. How do you, because you come to conflicts definitely in these processes, do you have a kind of methodology or way to solve them, or maybe even avoid them?
What we learned in our relationship with institutions is that it's better to prevent, I would say, like to try to step forward before others gonna take that same step in a way you don't like they're gonna take that step. And this is like when you cannot dialogue. Because what I feel that like this confrontation, today actually tells us is that like culture power stands in creating like that bridge that can face conflict and not avoid it, not keeping avoiding it, just towards over polarization, which is if you do not confront with conflict, then you will of course, come to your own position and make it radical and extreme. So participatory processes are basically, I feel, a way of finding a common language in basically raising different perspective and needs, which is the table of discussion that we have to focus on. It's not the way we're saying things, but what we want to say. And the way we say it, it's going to be just we have to accept it will be different in some way. So participatory process and culture and arts and the artists, like we did a participatory project with Luca Boffi time ago on how different people perceive climate change through a different perception of time itself. We all have different ways of conceiving time, which is the basics, the most basic thing we can think of. And but not having anybody asking you the right question will never help you to actually find a way of narrating your way of seeing things and not confront with other people seeing it in a different way. So asking the right question is maybe and giving space for practices that are willing to in some way translate and decline your way of seeing things is I think the best thing we can try to do.
Masha, if we stay with the climate change, one of the projects that you did was Žerjav in 2023, after the floods that we had in Slovenia. And in fact, this project combined residents' experiences with climate adaptation principles to develop a network of more resilient public spaces. How do you involve a community in imagining a kind of different environmental future while it is still dealing with the trauma and the immediate practical consequences of the disaster?
Well, actually, this project was quite interesting because after the floods, we offered to municipalities around Slovenia our support in rethinking public spaces which were affected by floods and trying to make proposals how to restore them to be more resilient. So we started collaborating with a small municipality, Črna na Koroškem, and they proposed one settlement which is 2 or 3 kilometers away from this municipality or from the center. When we came to the settlement and started talking to the people, we actually realized that floods are not the biggest issues they are dealing with. It was, for them, the bigger issues was accessibility. So, because they all said that if they don't drive car, they don't have a possibility to reach easily even the most essential services, such as, health centers or shops or schools. There were no path lanes, there were not bicycle lanes, so they were really trapped in this small valley. So we actually changed the flow of the project. We changed the focus on accessibility and also trying to see the whole development of the settlement. So from one side also these floods, but from the other side also very strong industry and air pollution, because there used to be a factory which it was called actually a dead valley, that part. So trying with involvement of these local residents, trying to set a long-term vision of the development of the place. So how to fight this industry versus nature, how to fight floods or this water versus public spaces, program versus accessibility, and etc. So it was actually a very interesting process, and the results were unpredictable at the beginning.
Great to hear. Also speaking about long-term visions and developments, and speaking about green transition and culture, I think that in culture, not only NGOs and individual practitioners, also institutions are more and more depending on the different open calls, European projects, and so on. So even with our project, the Material Library, everything is great when you have the money to develop it, but then when the money is over, when the project is officially over, I mean the open call project, this has to become a permanent program of the museum. But you don't get extra funds for extra technicians and so on. So you have to embed this into the amount of people employed. It's quite a challenge that in fact you need to address already at the beginning and think about it. So we do a lot of small interventions. We do a lot of projects that have a kind of a very limited duration. And I really like how Jane Withers in the Super Vernacular Biennial called them as a kind of, you have these projects that kind of connect and they grow into the movement, and movement can create a change. But I also see a lot of potentials in the project that start, live for the time of duration of the subsidies, and then in fact they're finished. So how do you think, or how do you approach in your practices this transition from intervention, temporary intervention, to the systemic changes? I know it's a super difficult and million-dollar question, but do you have a good example, maybe to connect with the municipality, as in cases of Prostorož, that then can take over the project, or can you answer that? I know it's not easy.
Yeah, I don't really have really good example, except maybe the one I mentioned before, the Library of Things, which I think in this sense was very successful, also because of the very start where we really thought what are all the steps needed to function, that it can function from day to day and from year to year. So who are the key actors, which text needs to be done, what kind of people we need, so how to predict incomes, etc. So in this sense, I mean, ideally in each project, I think, after the opening, actually the project starts. So ideally we would need at least 2 years to see and to evaluate the project, but also, as you said, we are always, since also our functioning is always depend on European fundings or municipalities who are very time limited. So when the project is opening for them, that's the end of the project. So this time limit is always an issue, and or the fundings. Nobody wants to finance that. But I can also say that lately we do have, like right now we are negotiating for a few projects with investors or with municipalities where this 2-year evaluation is a part of commission. So maybe they did realize that how important this part of the success of the project will be. So maybe just, trying to have this in mind, more in mind, before starting the project, and addressing how important that is.
How does this evaluation process happens, in fact? For example, you do the intervention, I don't know, they did a very beautiful project, you did a very beautiful project with the university clinics of Ljubljana, this kind of shading islands. So do you go back, do you observe, do you do interviews with people? Again, having in mind methodology of working.
Well, this clinical center project started as a very, very small project. We had 5,000 euros for making an interface, asking people all around Ljubljana where they feel hot and what they do when they feel hot. So in 3 weeks, we got more than 700 responses. And what we realized is that, this area around medical clinical center was one of the most marked spot, and also it corresponded to the urban heat island of Ljubljana. So we became much interested in that area also because there are so many vulnerable people who are there. And we tried to continue working on this area. So we searched for new cause, and we did, for 2 years, we did very large survey which involved all these methods that I explained already before, so observations, focus groups, workshops, a lot of information. And we got this information that this project involved only analysis, but when we got this information, it came out that few crucial problems of the space. So the lack of greenery, the really bad connections and wayfindings, and the third one, that people did not have a place where to wait. So either being a patient that you have to wait for appointment, or a relative maybe that you have to wait for your relative, he's there, or even the medical crew who during the lunchtime, or even that was just right after the COVID, people wanted to stay out more and did not have any opportunity where to go. So as I said, we did not have much money, but we bought 16 benches and we installed them all around the area, and they had a QR code asking, do you want this bench to stay here? And 99% of the question was yes. And so collecting all this information, we presented them to municipality, to decision makers of the clinical center, and started collaborating more and more. So negotiating also about more long-term transformations, but again, yeah, this takes time. So we did plans for some locations, and meanwhile established also this kind of pavilion, one pavilion 2 years ago, and just this week we established another one near the maternity hospital. So these are all temporary installations or interventions that can be used in different locations, so they can stay here before until the transformation happens, and then it can be moved to another location for testing. I'm not sure if I answered.
Yeah, it was the evaluation. But maybe we continue first with the small interventions and then systemic changes. So how do you deal with these temporary, not small interventions, but temporary projects, and how to continue them, how to build them within your processes of operation, organizational, material, programmatic, and so on?
Actually, okay. This is the big challenge, I think, especially what you were saying before, like keeping it economically sustainable as well, and resource-based, basically human resource-based as well. So valuing that part as the same, with the same respect. Kilowatt was born as something a bit different. So what I can first say is that obviously we started with a more entrepreneurial approach that was based on governance, thought to balance for-profit and non-profit activities. And this baseline, this governance with 3 forms, I would say, juridical forms, actually helped in the first moment, in the first years, the organization to take baby steps, but by its own investment, I would say. So taking temporary, trials, and then when it was in the power to get them finished, then keep it beyond the temporary moment experiment. If these experiments were actually lived by the people in the community living the space as well, obviously. In time, while our artistic research grew, actually, we are starting to face a new problem, not having enough for-profit activities to support like our continuous and major research in art and culture and environmental issues. So what we tried was basically what we are trying is basically to, again, remember that every step we take, it's not only our step, but so trying to take some other players in our game, I would say, in our playground, and to play with us in some way. So basically, don't forget about the fact that businesses as well are other stakeholders, major stakeholders, should be equally interested in our shifting from temporary to continuous working on something, right? And I feel that our sector sometimes wants to forgive or actually take steps away from these players, basically because it's difficult to try to find a way of creating things together. But we actually had a really good example with the last residency that was created with Starts Network. So having an artist, Kalin Segal, that came and worked with us on erosion, but had the possibility to work with Technopolo, which is one of the major investment, both on a institutional and business likewise world, on technological innovation, in order to bring together forces, I would say. So my view, it's how to make temporary things enduring. It's remembering that you're not the only player and that somebody should support you in doing that, and not only institutions.
Marin, the same question goes to you.
I wouldn't say we work a lot with temporary, especially spatial interventions, but I would say moving towards systemic stuff, I think all three of us and our organizations, and also MAO, of course, there's a lot of educational programs which are meant for different types of people. And I think that's the most important, maybe small-scale thing that then goes towards systemic. For example, we did some temporary spatial interventions in Rijeka a long time ago, and then we decided we don't want to do this anymore because the city has different participatory budgeting formats, and maybe what we should do is help others, people from our city, to apply to this and make these projects much, much better. So already there is something in the system which maybe should be doing what we want to do and what we want from the city. And that's also another part. It's a big struggle, I think, for all of us. Should we expect systemic change from us, or should we expect it from the system? And where is this thin line between being an anarchist or a European projectist or there's a lot of this happening. But I think education, what we do in different, the School of Ecological Imagination, what you're doing with the Urbana Škola, how is it called, with students, Urban Academy, and so on. I think that's the most important, maybe, thing for systemic change.
I completely agree. We still have 10 minutes, something like that, huh? Yeah, okay. We could also touch, or I would like that we touch also the circularity of materials, but also the circularity beyond materials that we, of course, heard a lot also from the Biennale today. So when you do the project, to what extent you are aware of using existing materials or picking up things from the local environment or developing a kind of bio-regional projects that are also a very important part of the green transition, not only in culture but in general. Maybe we start with Marin now.
Well, we work a lot with people. It's our main focus. So there's a lot of circularity there in sharing knowledge, creating knowledge together, and so on. So it's very, very long term. But besides that, in the last few years, we really try to incorporate this in different projects we have going on. So right now we are working a lot with tourism, also with Crater, which you mentioned, and La Foresta in Rovereto in the Italian Alps. So it's also our big focus now, especially in Rijeka, where tourism is something that's just starting now, with all the people coming with cruisers to Rijeka and then heading into buses to go to Ljubljana. That's happening. It's very nice. Anyway, so what can tourism be and what can regenerative tourism be in a city, which is a quite crazy place? So we are exploring a lot of different stuff, and the first thing that popped into my mind is creating a new souvenir for the city of Rijeka, which now, as we planned it, is supposed to be built by different craftspeople in the city, exclusively from materials which are present in the city, with people who have worked in the past in different industries in the city, the shipyard, the textile factory, different factories and so on, and also different ways of distributing this. Maybe a souvenir can be something which is borrowed, something which you give back the second time you come to Rijeka, and so on. I don't know if it answers your question, but it's very interesting to explore how to, let's say, include this deep circularity and this other future, which we all want, into very, very high impact sectors like tourism, for example.
Have you ever used carbon calculator?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on them in culture? It's for you. Okay, obviously not. So about circularity first, and then also I would like to touch the carbon calculators. Yes.
Thanks, because basically I totally agree, especially on the touristic abuse, I would say, that is so much forgiven in this moment and pushed. But I was thinking about how to rethink circularity also beyond materials. Is for us, it's basically something we're questioning our cultural center at first, and it's okay, how can we put into contact, create connections between different, resources or stakeholders or people that have that specific knowledge, that specific tool, like Technopolo was an example, that capacity in terms of instruments, economy, support, and know-how. So basically, what can we do over the space? Obviously, like, we worked a lot with in our space in sort of bringing back to life all the parts of the greenhouses and of the serre we found around, but that's and giving them new life, also basically giving them as a gift to artists in order for them to develop new ideas. But rather, beyond the space, what can we do? Probably create connections. Probably like take that human capital and time-consuming activity, which is relating and finding what you need in order to bring to arrive to your goal, to step towards your goal. And if we can help actors to dialogue between each other, I think this is a way of being moving towards circularity that we can actually support in our way. Carbon. No, we work since the beginning of our organization. We started our organization like having a sort of balance sheet for impact, that it's not the social and classical greenwashing corporate use, basically because we didn't need any of those things. But that was our way of testing how much we were going close to our objective and our mission, and how could we measure our movements, our directioning towards that vision. And what we were more proud of were taking track of the failures. I feel the tools we were given to prove that our Festival for Ecological Imagination was carbon-free, totally dismissed this point. I don't know, like it was that you weren't able to communicate. I mean, when we use our impact sheet, people understand what we are doing and what we are talking about. We weren't able, and that was a pity because we truly tried, we weren't able to use that as a tool in order to understand how well we were going or how badly we were going, and not even to communicate this to third parties.
Thank you. Masha, you worked, for example, in Krater, because you mentioned Krater a lot. There you established at the beginning a kind of spatial infrastructure where you practically used existing materials in total. Is this also the way you approach other projects, and how, I mean, if we touch this circularity in case of materials in the Prostorož way of working?
Yeah, so since the beginning we always, in the beginning we used very cheap materials because we did not have budget, and we made these very temporary interventions. But very soon we realized that also this was just creating more waste. So after a while we changed this principle into having less material and trying to reuse it as much as possible times, or having less projects or less implementations, but those that we make that were made more stuff, so that they last much longer. Or, for example, these pavilions that we do, they are like indestructible. They could last even, I don't know how many years. And again, that they can be dismantled easily, transformed easily, and same as Krater. That's why we used these containers, because we knew that if building certain structures and they knew that they will have to move away to another location, probably soon, this will be the easiest way to transform it. And yeah, whatever we put on Krater was brought from the other projects that were already existing. So before Krater we had this terrain, and there was a lot of already existing equipment there, and some art projects which were also combined, always using the same materials. Yeah, so things, yeah. But already on Krater now they did realize that, yeah, after 5 years maybe now, yeah, some things are falling apart. Maybe they did not even think that they will last so long. I mean, the location will last so long. But I think that if we did it again, we would use, we would rather use better materials to prolong their viability than having these cheap materials which fall apart and then you have to work again. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe now is the time. We are approaching the end and we are hungry. The lunch is waiting outside. If you have perhaps a question, otherwise I have the last one. It is about transferability of your ideas and methodologies without standardization. Because your work is very grounded, very situated in the local environment. But also, I really see in the project that you do a kind of methodology, the kind of way of working through educational programs, through building interventions and so on. Do you see your work also is it something that could be used in a different locations, or you would be invited in a completely different situation? How would you react? Would you change your approach, or you would, in a way, try to work with the same ways of working that you do otherwise? At your situation.
If I can start, yeah. For us, certain methodologies are always the same. So if we work with space, without observations, we cannot start the projects. And also talking to the people, that's always a part of methodology. But then it depends on what kind of people we talk to. So if we work with children, we would use different means of interactions. So they would be maybe stronger in drawings, or if we work with young people, we would use more creative methods. Or with older people, for example, they really want to talk a lot and you have to take time. And so it depends, one, who are you working with? And of course, it also depends what is the topic of the project. So if we, I don't know, work on a project which tackles sustainable mobility, we would use some measurements, like, I don't know, speed measurements, or tracking how many people or car pass by. Or if we work with heat, we would use, again, different tools for measurements. So that is maybe the difference. But generally, I think these are all very common methods that can be transformed to other. But it's not one method, of course, yeah, one methodology, yeah.
We have this discussion a lot, I would say, in my organization. And always the conversation ends with that maybe we would not like to work anywhere else, because it's sort of like a Rijeka methodology, but I mean, obviously we share a lot. All of the methodologies in this urban practices are similar in a way, and that's why we also feel connected always. But we really want to work with this crazy creature that is Rijeka. But we have a bioregion defined, and that is Trieste, Koper, and Ljubljana. Istria is out of the picture. They are very different than Rijeka, and Zagreb is out of the picture. So in this corridor, which is also the Alpe Adria bioregion, maybe Venice a bit, we can talk about Venice. But yeah, that's the bioregion that we feel like endogenous to. How would you say this? Not feral in a way. So that's, we really feel that it's our natural habitat.
I totally agree with Maren, actually. Not because we're not willing to move away from our space or place, and not that we're not curious about new spaces, new communities, and so on, but basically because you have also to feel and conceive, in our case, our limits. Our project was conceived within a specific space. So the organization itself was built together with the space. So when we talk a lot about, I mean, we do also consultancy to other organizations, and we supported also other incubators and so on, but we realized going on and on that it's kind of difficult not to approach trying to creating a scale of your own project, but rather translating like your know-how and putting everything into question again, because this is like the real thing you have to do if you want to start over with a new space. I feel our branch of consultants are taught us a lot by going and working in Central Asia with and North Africa with organizations that are incubating startups there. And what they turned back to with was, okay, we thought we got it all, while we're part of the Western capitalistic idea ourselves, and it's so difficult for us just to, for us to do that same shift we're like promising ourselves to do, that we have to be at least, I don't know, aware of. That's the thing. So it would be nice, but you start over again.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I give the word to you, I think we don't have really time for a big conclusion, just some practical information that we forgot to tell at the beginning, if you may. If there are architects that are part of the Chamber of Architects, this is a registered conference, so you could sign and you get the points. And also as a host at this moment, I would really like to thank our guests for the contribution, Giulia, Tommaso, Chiara, Marin, Masha, Jean and Barbara, Laura, sorry. Oh gosh. And you know what? I really put an effort. I really put an effort and was thinking here that I should not do that. And I did it. Okay. We are all MAO. So, and special thanks goes to Borut and PiNA for this amazing collaboration. And at the end, for Anna and Blaszka, I think they deserve the big applause to make this conference happen. Okay, so we conclude.
Thank you very much. I have to admit that it always scares me when somebody asks me how much time do I still have. But you are on time, and thank you very much. And give one more round of applause also for the Museum of Architecture and Design. Thank you very much. And I have to tell you and ask you for another round of applause that this event was organized as a part of the project's platform of used materials and EkoKreatura. These projects are financially supported by the Ministry of Culture of the Republic of Slovenia as part of the Green Transition in Culture Call and by the European Union. And we truly hope that they will hear us. Thank you for supporting this kind of project.